So hey guys, welcome back to my channel. What if Naruto was the god of law and justice? Movie. Uzushiogakure, unknown. 15 years ago the sound of pouring rain echoed in the darkness of Uzushiogakure. Kushina Uzumaki screamed as she pushed her newborn son out of her body. One of the maids instructed Kushina, "Come on Kushina-chan, push." After an intense few minutes Kushina's baby boy had finally born. She looked at her son and smiled. She said his name will be Uzumaki Naruto. Yes, he shall be a powerful heir to the throne. A gruff voice echoed through the room. She tiredly looked at her father. Uzumaki Arashi. His hair was white but still had red tufts in places. He wore the royal Uzumaki armor which was black with a red spiral imprinted in the middle and a golden cloak bellowing behind him. The Uzumaki clan were a clan descended from the old gods and ancient demons, most notably Odin and Kagaya Otsutsuki. The clan was split into two categories, the royal bloods that were the most powerful of the clan and the branch members who were practically the foot soldiers. The Uzumaki had long since hidden themselves from the world due to the fact that they believed humans to be evil, and they were right in a sense. They watched as war after war plagued this earth, and most recently the surge in superpowered beings. The Uzumaki clan's powers were derived from the source and their demonic heritage, hence their powers varied. An example would be Uzumaki Kushina, who had the ability of instant regeneration and can summon the chains of hell capable of sealing any being. The strongest were even proclaimed gods amongst their own clan members, and that was exactly what Naruto would become. Arashi looked at his daughter and said, "Rest, my daughter, we have much to discuss when you have returned to full health." His armor rattled as he walked out of the room. 8 years later Naruto sat in a circle where 20 branch Uzumaki warriors surrounded him. The branch members were dressed in white armor with a red spiral and had katanas in their hands. Naruto wore a miniature black armor with a golden cloak. He had red hair and glowing purple eyes. Uzumaki Arashi looked at his grandson and said, "Naruto, today we will begin the process of finding out what your powers are. The first task is to defeat these warriors." Arashi clapped and the group charged at Naruto with supernatural speeds. Arashi instructed, "Find your inner powers, Naruto, or you will die." Naruto closed his eyes and began focusing on his core, something that all Uzumakis had. When he opened his eyes he saw a warrior about to stab him in the chest, however it was as if he could see the warrior in slow motion. He quickly dived to the side and saw the man slowly miss him. Arashi smirked, "Super speed, huh? How interesting, it's been a while since an Uzumaki was born with this ability." Kushina on the other hand was worried sick. She did this test and only survived due to her immense regeneration. She hoped her son was as powerful as Arashi believed him to be. Naruto dodged several sword attacks before the group switched gears and started using elemental attacks. Naruto dodged a fireball but was struck by a bolt lightning, causing him to scream in pain. Kushina almost jumped in the arena to get her son, but Arashi stopped her. "Father, we need." Arashi and Kushina saw Naruto punch a man with enough force to send him flying into the wall and create a spider crack. Naruto began dodging and punching. He managed to defeat 13 enemies, but the other 7 were on a class of their own. One branch member floated in the air and began using his unique power, which allowed him to produce explosive fire. Naruto dove to the side, but the explosive shockwave made him fly high up into the air. 2 branch members used their lightning powers to fire bolts of electricity at the 8-year-old. Naruto saw the incoming bolts and he knew that he was toast if they hit. He felt a primal energy erupt from him. The bolts were deflected back to their users as the earth beneath him shifted. Naruto's eyes glowed white as he began subconsciously manipulating gravity around him. In a second everyone in the arena, including Kushina and Arashi, were sent to the ground as the gravity was increased a tenfold. Naruto screamed, "What is going on? How can I stop?" Kushina shouted back, "Concentrate, Naruto. I know you can do it, son." Naruto closed his eyes and concentrated on the particles he was controlling before releasing his control over it. Kushina and the other 8 people slowly got up, their bodies thankful that the force on them was gone. Arashi clapped, "Well done, Naruto, but I have a feeling that we have only scratched the surface of what you can do." Naruto nodded, but just as he was about to walk to his mother and grandfather, he felt an overwhelming amount of fatigue, causing him to faint on the spot. Kushina ran to her son and Arashi merely stood there. He thought, "This is a beginning of a new era for our clan, and I am going to make sure my grandson is the one to lead us to glory." 2 years later, a 10-year-old Naruto stood in the middle of the training room following the katas his mother was showing him. 2 years ago, his grandfather began intensifying his training. He would train 7 days a week due to them finding out he had the adaptive regeneration of his mother. They also found out he had a form of telepathy allowing him to read minds and manipulate them only if they had eye contact. Kushina said, "Good job, Naruto-kun. Tomorrow we will continue your training." Naruto nodded and trudged off to his room. Kushina turned to the dark corner in the room. "What have you found out?" A shadow erupted from the corner and then turned to a hooded figure. The figure replied, "The Branch family are preparing to wage a civil war. Your uncle is responsible for the rise in riots outside the citadel." Kushina scratched her chin. "I suppose you have told my father this." The figure merely nodded. "We must guard the orb. If they gain control over it, they could use it gain control over the world." The orb was a flux of energy that contained the energy of every dead Uzumaki. Each Uzumaki had an energy core allowing them to create clones, walk up walls and do various other things. When an Uzumaki died, their dead body would be taken to the citadel and they would harvest the remaining energy, adding it to the orb of energy that lay underneath the citadel. 5 years later, over the last 5 years, tensions began increasing, and recently the entire branch had risen up against the smaller royal families, stating they had a right to have everything that the royal family had. They were being led by a man named Ryu Uzumaki, who was Kushina's uncle. The branch members had began to siege the citadel in the last year, and the elite guard were the only thing capable of holding them back. The other lords were either old or very young to fight, and they were running out of water and food. Arashi had declared that they had only one choice, and that kill them all until they stopped resisting. Unknown to them, Ryu had begun using secret tunnels he knew as a kid to find his way to the orb. So a day later, every Uzumaki in the royal family who could fight attacked the branch family who camped outside the citadel. The battle was intense, but the royal family's superior powers overwhelmed the branch family's vast numbers. The battle, however, wasn't without consequence, and almost half the island had been destroyed. The citadel towers being heavily damaged, and many casualties had occurred. Women and children were caught in the crossfire and had perished. Kushina limped into the throne room looking for her father and Naruto. Her body regenerated the damage she sustained from the battle. Her father had grown too old to effectively fight, whereas her uncle, according to her spy, was using demonic spells to keep his youth. She saw the throne had shifted to the side, showing that her father must have gone downwards to where the orb was. Once her leg had healed, she ran towards the stairs at inhuman speeds and only ran faster when she heard Naruto screaming as well. Once she arrived, she was sickened by what she saw. Arashi lay beside Naruto dead, a gaping hole in his abdomen being the cause of death. Naruto was on his knees as he saw the man in front of him. He had faded red hair and had 3 eyes. The top eye had a purple ringed shape with tomos in it. Naruto's eyes were shadowed. He muttered, "You killed Grandpa." Ryu laughed evilly. "Yes, I suppose I killed my brother. Oh look, your mother has come to join the party." Kushina glared at her uncle and said, "Get away from the orb now." But the man didn't listen. Instead, he launched a black orb at Kushina, who dodged only for it to turn around, shape itself like a lance and stab her in the chest. The man grinned. "No point resisting, Kushina. That thing destroys you down to a molecular level. In other words, you'll be atomized." Kushina coughed. "Naruto, I love you, my son. Listen to me, no matter what happens you have to live on. Please." And like that, Kushina exploded in a dome of energy. Naruto screamed as he watched his mother die in front of his eyes. His powers went haywire as gravity was increased 1,000-fold. The earth itself crushed in wards. The walls crumbled and Ryu was sent straight into the ground. Ryu managed to say, "Boy, stop this madness. You are destabilizing the orb." But Naruto screamed in anguish even more, causing gravity to increase even more. Ryu's eyes widened when the stand that was holding the orb cracked and broke. The orb touched the ground in that second. The entire island was enveloped in a blue light before it exploded in a blue energy dome that could be seen from space. Inside the dome, Naruto screamed in pain as the combined energy of the deceased Uzumaki entered his body. He heard the voices of the dead within his mind and felt every part of his body was on fire. His body being reconstructed to hold that energy within him, his powers were amplified tenfold and the knowledge of his clan forcefully entered his minds. His armor changed from the normal black to black with golden outlines and a red cloak. 2 swords appeared on his back. The first was a normal katana but was known as the swords capable of hurting gods. It was known as the sword of Kusanagi. The second sword was the legendary sword wielded by Izanagi, Tatsuka no Tsurugi. It also looked like a katana with a purple hilt and a red blade. When the dome finally dispersed, you could see Naruto lying in a crater unconscious as water slowly seeped and covered the crater. Watchtower. Everyone was assembled and they were watching the massive blue dome of energy. Superman and WW were already heading towards it. Batman had put all of them on high alert. He stated that the energy was showing massive spike in M waves and the increase in gravitational fields were inhuman, and if they didn't have superhuman durability they would be crushed almost instantly. 3 minutes later, Superman and Wonder Woman arrived just in time to see a young teen being swallowed by water. Wonder Woman was struggling to even float, whereas Superman's flight, which depended on him subconsciously affecting gravity allowing him to fly, Superman was sent crashing down into ocean. Superman was drawn straight towards Naruto, and that only made it easier for Superman to pick Naruto up and use his immense strength to jump them out of the water. Wonder Woman hooked them both to their lasso, and before long Martian Manhunter appeared along with Aquaman and Captain Comet. Martian Manhunter tried to enter Naruto's mind but found the boy was telepathic resistant, probably stemming from the teen's telepathy. Together along with Captain Comet they managed to teleport Naruto to the Watchtower. An hour later it took both Hal Jordan and Jon Stewart to create a field around Naruto so that he didn't crush everything. Naruto slowly woke up and he found himself in the weirdest of places, some kind of high-tech hospital. Naruto saw a green field around him, and 2 people dressed in green spandex and rings holding the construct. Hal Jordan, seeing Naruto awake, said, "Can you hear me, kid?" Naruto spoke. "Who are you? Where am I?" The ring spoke in a mechanical voice, translating voice, recognized language, feudal Japanese detected. Hal Jordan spoke using the ring to change his language. "I am Hal Jordan of the Justice League. We saved you." Naruto couldn't remember what had happened, only that the orb had destroyed Uzushiogakure. Oh God! Naruto's eyes widened in alarm and he began to feel physically sick. He had killed them all. He had killed his entire family. "So kid, where are you from?" Hal asked. Naruto glared at the man. He said, "I am from Uzushiogakure." Lantern sensed the anger in the boy's voice and wondered where it had come from. Martian Manhunter, Superman and Batman entered the room. The Dark Knight glared at Naruto and said, "Who are you and why did you make that explosion? Speak." The ring translated it and Naruto growled, "I don't need to be ordered by you. However, I shall indulge you. I am Uzumaki Naruto, the last Uzumaki. My home, it was destroyed," he said somberly, still in shock as to what had happened. "And your home is?" Batman asked. Naruto stared up at him with an inquisitive gaze. "Why would you like to know?" His guarded expression was suspicious to Batman, but he understood that he was startled by his new environment and that he was still under shock. Superman said softly, "We are just trying to help, kid." He knelt down and looked at him. "My home was destroyed as well." Naruto steeled himself, barely able to stop himself from crying as he answered, "I am from Uzushiogakure, an island hidden away from the world for thousands of years." Superman sighed, "I'll bring Wonder Woman here. She is the only one who comes from a hidden island." He flew off towards the war room to fetch Diana. Batman gave the boy one last look before he excused himself. "Well, try and figure out something for you," he said as he left with Martian Manhunter. Naruto stared uncomfortably at the metal floor, wondering exactly who these people were and what they wanted from him. Hal seemingly read his mind. "If you're wondering how I ended up here, we found you at the bottom of the ocean. You almost created a tsunami." Naruto asked, "What's a tsunami?" How exactly had he created a harbor wave? He didn't remember ever using or being proficient in Sweden. Hal raised an eyebrow at his lack of knowledge, but then again, he couldn't fault the boy for it considering that his people lived isolated from the world. "You have the ability to use gravity, right?" Naruto nodded. "Well, your gravity was causing the ocean to form tidal waves. If we hadn't stopped you, you'd end up drowning half of Japan and China." Naruto's blank stare indicated that he had no idea where either of those two places were. An uncomfortable silence spilled into the room. Hal wasn't used to comforting teenagers and so he ended up leaving the boy in his own thoughts. Naruto didn't like this hollow husk that he was being held in. It made him miss his home even more, but dwelling on such thoughts only made him feel weak and miserable. He had to stay strong, it was his mother would have told him. Especially considering that he didn't know who these people were. "So what do you guys do?" Naruto asked. Hal grinned confidently. We save the world. Naruto raised an eyebrow at his boastful comment but found no indication that he was lying, and his negative emotion sensing wasn't flaring up like a red light, so he knew that they didn't want to attack him. So you are heroes then, he said. Warriors like me. Hal said, yes, we're like you. He didn't know enough about the kid to make such a judgment, but Hal knew that he had to be accommodating. It was rare enough to meet a metahuman with the ability to be a planetary-level threat. It was even rarer to meet a recluse with said ability. It made him dangerous, in the wrong hands of course. Still, that didn't mean he couldn't befriend the boy. Sometimes, a good distraction was all that was needed to help someone out of their despair. Justice League War Room. Batman, Wonder Woman, Hawkgirl, Jon Stewart, Superman, Martian Manhunter and Flash sat in the war room. Batman said, this is Uzumaki Naruto. He says that he is from a hidden island. What do you think? Superman replied, his heartbeat was normal, he wasn't lying. Green Lantern also answered he was startled by the hospital. He probably isn't familiar with advanced tech. Batman nodded, we have a bigger problem. He has the ability to manipulate gravity and he seems to be trained like Diana. That means he will kill any villains as a warrior. He needs a mentor. Wonder Woman replied, I can mentor him. Superman has Supergirl. Green Lantern is busy. Martian Manhunter has his niece. Batman and Flash have their students, so that leaves me and Hawkgirl. Batman nodded. Yes, out of all the people here, you are probably the only one who could show him the ropes. Does anyone object this proposition? No one raised their hands, and it was decided. Uzumaki Naruto would become the protege of Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman stood up and said, I guess I'll greet my new student. She flew towards the med bay where she saw Naruto chuckling with Hal Jordan. He appeared somewhat more different than what she had assumed he would. Depressed as he was, Hal had done a good job of keeping him distracted. Naruto peeked up from Hal's dazzling light show as soon as he sensed a new presence. She floated in, landing effortlessly in front of him. Hal shut off his connection to the ring as Naruto and Diana stared at each other for a while, both wondering what this sense of familiarity was. She asked, are you Uzumaki Naruto? Naruto grinned as he looked the hot woman up and down. He asked, what of it? Wonder Woman replied, I am Diana of the Mischira. I have a deal for you. We of the Justice League can provide you with money and support, however we would like for you to train under me so you can familiarize yourself with this world. It sounded like a very good deal, Naruto admitted to himself. He had no idea what the world was like beyond Uzushiogakure, but his mother had told him that they had isolated themselves from the world on purpose. But he knew about the history of the one that stood in front of him. He frowned, the Mischira, huh? You expect an Uzumaki to take orders from an Amazon. I am the last son of Uzushiogakure. I will not be commanded by a silly little girl whose mother taught her that men are the devil. Even in his loss, Naruto still had enough pride not to be ordered by someone that his family had proclaimed as an enemy. Wonder Woman drew her sword and glared at the boy. Say that again, I dare you. Naruto flipped off his bed and took the Totsuka blade from his back. A black flame danced around the red blade. Naruto glared at the woman, but she glared back. Hal quickly vouched for her. Naruto. Diana is a good person. She is just trying to help. He sighed, fine, I accept your offer. He lowered his blade and gave her an even stare, but I will not enter the Mischira. Wonder Woman nodded, that is acceptable I suppose. Now first thing first, we need you to learn English. What is English? He asked. Diana gave a simple look to Hal that asked why he had not at the very least given the boy a rundown of the world. Hal shrugged. I wouldn't get my hopes up. He's even more clueless than you were. Wonder Woman ignored the lantern as she looked at her protege one last time. It's the language that we speak. Naruto merely pointed towards the door. Well then, lead the way, princess. Naruto pondered as he left the med bay, and he thought that maybe, just maybe, he might be able to move on from what had happened. 10 months later, April 4, 2010, Wonder Woman's apartment. Washington, D.C. Naruto sat on a couch reading The Art of War by Sun Tzu. The past 6 months had been extremely boring. Wonder Woman had told him that he wasn't allowed in the Justice League until he turned 18 years old and he had to be home-schooled at the Wayne Manor. However, that wasn't a problem considering Naruto's speed reading and vast telepathy. It was pretty easy for him to recall everything he read. It took him a while to understand a few things like physics, but his tutor had stated that Naruto could easily reach the level of people his age in a few more months. He however was allowed to train with Wonder Woman and the two would spar for hours. It was a fact that they were even in hand-to-hand combat and weapon proficiency, making each of their spar extremely competitive. So far it was 30 to Naruto and 29 to Wonder Woman. He did however question the rule the Justice League had on not killing their enemies. He didn't understand the purpose of leaving a foe alive if he was a murderer, but since he was dependent on them, he would just follow the rule for now. However, considering that most of Wonder Woman's fights involved going to Greece, it was no surprise that no one even knew of him apart from the occupants of Greece. He had been shown once or twice helping Wonder Woman defeat Cheetah, but that was all really. He was getting antsy at not being able to fight a worthy foe. Of course there were positives, since Batman said it made him better at covert missions as he would stay under the radar of major villains. Naruto sighed as he finished the last page of the book. He threw the book to the side and walked towards the kitchen to get himself a drink when heard Wonder Woman's TV switch on. Batman's face appeared. Cage, Hal Jordan requires your assistance in Coast City. Coordinates will be sent your visor. Right. I am on it. His body glowed an ethereal gold as one of the seals on his chest summoned his new armored costume. Naruto still had the same body armor, except he now had a black metallic mask that had a red visor on it. Batman said it would be wise for Naruto to have a navigating system since he didn't know the exact map of America and would simply get lost. However, unknown to Naruto, Batman had a secret agenda, which was to analyze Naruto's fights and make a contingency file against Naruto if he decided to go rogue. Naruto flew out of the penthouse and towards his target with speeds equaling that of lightning. Meanwhile, Hal Jordan was fighting Sinestro and the two were equally matched. However, the tides changed when Solomon Grundy showed up. It suddenly became 2-on-1 and he called for backup, but most of the league were already fighting their own foes, so he was going to get backup in the form of his favorite teenager, Uzumaki Naruto, or as everyone else knew him, Cage. He dodged to the side as Grundy threw a car but was hit in his back by a beam from Sinestro. Hal was sent crashing into the ground and was about to get hit by Grundy when all of a sudden a blur smashed into Grundy with such force that it drove him through several buildings. Grundy landed in Coast City Park with Naruto floating over him. Naruto said calmly, "Give up, you gray monster." Grundy shouted, "Grundy, kill Armor Boy." Grundy jumped and tried to tackle, but Naruto dodged and cut him across the chest with Kusanagi. Naruto smirked, "This is my blade, Kusanagi. It can cut the strongest of beings, and you are from having such a status, but you will be enough to entertain me for now." Naruto sheathed his sword and said, "Come, beast. I will fight you with my fists." Naruto flew towards the standing Grundy and delivered a punch that shattered its jaw but watched as it healed with ease. Naruto grinned, "Yes, you will be a worthwhile foe." He appeared beneath Grundy, who was clueless as to where Naruto had vanished, and delivered an uppercut that sent him soaring into the air. Naruto merely used his gravity powers to send Grundy spiraling downwards into the ground. Grundy hit the ground hard enough to make a massive crater, however he only had minimal damage. Naruto watched as the beast rose with an enraged face before it charged at him. Naruto let the beast hit him with a massive hook that sent him flying into the water fountain. Naruto rose from the water unharmed and his red visor turned flashed blue as Naruto fired a massive beam of blue energy from his eyes that knocked Grundy back hundreds of meters. Grundy roared, but Naruto shook his head, "You've gotten boring, beast. It's time to end you." He flew towards the beast and struck a flat palm that hit Grundy in the middle of the chest, making him stumble. Naruto performed a tiger hand seal and muttered, "Fuinjutsu. Prison seal." Fuinjutsu marks spread all over Grundy's body, immobilizing the beast. Naruto said, "I'll leave you here for the police. I hope that next time we meet you will give me a better fight." Naruto saw Hal Jordan fly towards him. Hal shouted, "Great job, Naruto, although you could have done with less collateral damage." Naruto snorted, "Where is the fun with that? So where did Sinestro go?" Hal Jordan replied, "He left via a portal. He wasn't expecting for me to have backup." Naruto said, "Well, I should be heading back. Diana will have my head if I don't get to the penthouse for dinner." Hal laughed, "She has you whipped, man. It's like you two are dating." Naruto retorted, "She has a boyfriend, remember, Superman." Hal shrugged, yes, the Boy Scout managed to bag an Amazon, but for a long time their relationship has been strained. Nearly every hero in the Watchtower betted on how long they would last. I still say that won't even last the rest of the year. Naruto replied, "Well, they seemed pretty good to me this morning. Got to go, Jordan." Hal waved by as he saw Naruto blast into the air, traveling at transonic speeds towards Washington, D.C. Diana's apartment. Naruto flew through the open window and saw Diana sitting on the couch talking to Superman through Skype. Naruto landed softly and Diana looked at her protege and asked, "Where did you go?" Naruto replied, "Coast City, fought Grundy, he was an interesting beast." Diana said, "There's some lasagna in the oven if you want some food." Naruto grinned, "Thanks, I'll eat it later." Wonder Woman merely nodded and returned to her conversation with her boyfriend. Naruto looked back at his mentor with a frown. He didn't understand what she saw in the Kryptonian, but he dare not say his opinion in front of her. Next day, April 5, 2010, Naruto walked out of the Wayne Manor with Alfred Pennyworth, who was the loyal butler for the Wayne family. Alfred spoke, "Same time tomorrow, Master Uzumaki." Naruto wore a black muscle shirt and leather jacket with a pair of blue jeans. He wore a heavy backpack that contained all of his books. Naruto said, "Thank you, Alfred." Naruto blasted himself into the air using clouds as cover, traveling at a cruising speed of 400 miles per hour. His telescopic eyesight allowing him to see the dark city known as Gotham. Gotham was an infamous city known for having the highest crime rates in all categories from theft to mass murder. It was a haven for criminals, mercenaries and corrupt government officials, and the increase in metahuman villains like Poison Ivy and Clayface didn't help. Naruto suddenly heard a scream from downwards, and the mental laughter that followed sounded feminine. He spun him towards the direction of the sound before diving with enough speed to surpass that of a bullet twice. Down at Gotham Docks, Harley Quinn, Catwoman and Poison Ivy laughed as plants held onto to a female cop. "You came at the wrong time, darling. We were just about to steal some expensive shipment." The cop screamed as Harley Quinn drew a gun, but before she could pull the trigger, a massive amount of gravity pushed them to the ground. Naruto hit the ground, his voice dark as he spoke, "You will not be killing anyone today." Catwoman looked at the team curiously, and she could tell he would kill them in an instant. However, Harley jumped and tried to clobber Naruto with a bat. Naruto grabbed her and threw her straight at a container, almost as if she was a mere ball to him. She hit the metal container with her head and dented it before slumping unconscious. Naruto's grin didn't leave his face. "She won't remember any of this. Now who else wants to get beaten?" Poison Ivy looked at him. "You're strong. Why are you on the sides of the angels?" Naruto grinned, turned demonic. "Oh darling, me on the side of the angels? You don't know me at all?" He charged at her but was stopped by a batarang. He turned and saw Batman looking at him. The man shook his head, telling Naruto he would handle it. Naruto smiled, "Well, that's my cue, girls. Hopefully we won't see each other under such unpleasant circumstances." Batcave Bruce replayed the fight between Grundy and Naruto. He typed a few things into his Batcomputer and the face of Silas Stone appeared on the gigantic screen. Silas asked Batman, "I suppose you want the data from what Grundy was restricted with?" Batman merely nodded. Silas continued, "Well, from what I can deduce is that the boy used an unknown energy to induce the immobilization. However, I found that in the middle of Grundy's chest there was text written in Japanese and translated as prison or something." Batman asked, "Have you studied the energy?" Silas answered, "Well, we only had residual energy to work with, but from what we can see it is unlike any energy we have encountered. The closest it resembles is Kai from the ancient texts and the energy that the new gods use for their powers. However, it functions as an energy source that can be converted into other types of energy like thermal or electrical energy." Batman scratched his chin. "So what you're saying is that this energy has many applications?" Silas nodded. "Yes, it could enhance a human's current condition and make them high supernatural in terms of physical aspect. The person who managed to seal Grundy has only scratched the surface of what his energy could do, and I am pretty sure he doesn't know how to use it properly yet." Batman replied, "Thank you for the information, Drive Stone. I'll be sure to contact you if something else comes up." The screen switched off and Bruce sighed in his seat. Alfred asked, "Sir, are you still spying on Master Uzumaki?" Bruce replied, "Yes. His powers are a secret to all of us and he continues to slowly show more and more of his abilities." He pressed a button and two metahumans appeared on the screen. "These are the youngest metahumans that I have classified as planetary level threats." Alfred read them out: Severe Threat Level, Supergirl, Kid Flash and Cage. Bruce nodded. Supergirl has the potential to become as strong as her cousin, and Cage has proved he could go in a fist fight with Wonder Woman and beat her in all categories with the exception of experience. His gravity powers allow him to increase his super strength by making things light. Supergirl may be in the Justice League, but she is far from being mature, and Cage is getting antsy sitting and learning all day long. His fight with Grundy proved that. Alfred sighed. If I may, Master Bruce, why don't you simply allow Naruto to join the Justice League? By all means, he is capable of fighting the foes of both Wonder Woman and Superman. Bruce leaned to his chair and replied, surprisingly, many have voted Naruto to not be allowed to join the League until such a time that Wonder Woman and the rest of the original team members agree that he is ready. Alfred shook his head. Naruto is a warrior, and an idle warriors are always irritable. He wants to fight someone strong, as that is the way he was brought up. I am sure what could happen if he finds out that you and the other Leaguers are extensively studying each of his moves. Bruce answered, he will turn and might become our worst enemy. I am sure many other people have taken an interest at Cage and his powers. Cage isn't affiliated with the Justice League, so he could leave if he was given a proposition by one of our enemies like Lex Luthor or worse, Amanda Waller. Alfred checked his watch. Now, if you excuse me, sir, I'll be bringing Master Dick from his school. Alfred excused himself and walked out of the Batcave towards the garage. Bryce sighed as he looked at the screen. He had a lot of thinking to do on the question that was ringing in his head. What does he do with Uzumaki Naruto? Diana's missions usually involved her traveling to Thymesakara, but Naruto swore never to enter a place that the Greek gods have full jurisdiction over. It was pure blasphemy if a child of the Shinto entered the lands of the Greek god. So Naruto usually stayed in Washington, where the only villain over there was the mysterious Amanda Waller. So Bruce thought of a way to ease all these young sidekicks into the Justice League. First step was to take them to the Hall of Justice and from there allow them to work in a few low-profile missions. Now the only question that remained was which sidekicks would join Cage. Naruto had responded to a distress call by the police. Cheetah was back and she was out for blood. Naruto flew towards the humanoid cat's location. Wonder Woman had disappeared somewhere last night and Naruto didn't have the luxury of being able to contact her. Barbara Minerva aka the Cheetah cackled as she began slicing the policemen's weapons. They had surrounded the shopping mall which she currently occupied. The sounds of gunshots scared the people in the mall into a frenzy, which gave Cheetah the needed distraction to get close and begin the massacre. Cheetah began chalking the last policeman and hoisted him upwards. She heard the familiar clicking of armor in the distance. A bloodthirsty grin placated her lips. Cage. It's been far too long. Naruto landed in a crater formed in the middle of the mall. I would have thought you would have learnt your lesson by now, Cheetah. Cheetah threw the limp body of the policeman and turned to face her adversary. She grinned ferally. Oh, and what would that lesson be? Naruto unsheathed Kusanagi, that you cannot beat me. Cheetah laughed. I've been upgraded. She dashed towards her long claws unsheathed. Naruto stepped backwards in surprise at Cheetah's newfound speed. He used his sword to block a powerful slash towards his torso. He jumped to the side to avoid another. Cheetah's claws ripped through an entire pillar holding the mall. Damn. She is not just faster. Cheetah shouted. Tell me where your master is, Cage. Naruto's visor flashed red and the cheetah was sent to the ground by a wave of gravity. I am no one's slave, Cheetah. You sure fooled me. She cackled, trying her best to rile the young hero up. Naruto kicked the downed beast and sent her through the opening mall and crashing into a car. She groaned as she slowly got up. I need to distract him. Naruto was suddenly in front of her. He was faster than her. Cheetah gritted her teeth as she went sent flying into the air and was sent back, hurtling back into the street by Naruto's gravity pull. She coughed up blood. He was ruthless, even more so than her rival, Wonder Woman. She got up slowly and saw a blue energy beam coming towards her with what little balance she had. She rolled out of its way only to be hit by an explosion of a vehicle next to her. She lay on the ground and saw Naruto's Kusanagi pointed between her eyes. Yield. She growled, never, and in a flash, she got up, surprising Naruto, and her claws clashed against his armor. Naruto dodged a roundhouse kick but was punched in the torso, sending him flying into a car. The cheetah was getting faster and stronger. He flew into the air just in time to watch Cheetah barreling into the dented car and hurling it across the street. A powerful jet of chakra flew from his visor and went towards Cheetah, but she managed to dodge it. In an act of desperation, Naruto increased the gravity hundredfold, sending Minerva to the ground but also crushing everything in the block. Naruto was shocked to see Cheetah resisting the increase in gravity. Her body was turning more and more into that of a beast. A sigh of relief overcame Naruto when a lasso whipped past him and around the cheetah's neck. Cheetah was sent flying through the already damaged mall. Naruto returned the gravity to normal as Wonder Woman zoomed past him and towards the injured Cheetah. Naruto followed in suit. Cheetah was capable of keeping up with just Naruto, but the deadly combination of him and Wonder Woman proved too much for her. She was knocked unconscious by a blow to the head by Naruto. Naruto said, "Where were you?" Wonder Woman replied, "Metropolis. I was assisting Superman against Metallo and Lex Luthor." Naruto merely grunted, "I am heading home, now." Wonder Woman shouted, "Aren't you forgetting what today is?" Naruto shouted back as he was about to take off, "No, I will preserve my excitement should it prove it to be everything that was promised." Of course, he cared very little about this little get-together that Batman and the other Leaguers had planned for their little sidekicks. From his experience, Batman had a way of lying without actually lying. Hall of Justice. Naruto and Wonder Woman arrived a few minutes later than Flash and Kid Flash. Kid Flash turned around to his mentor. "Ha, I told you we wouldn't be the last ones here." Naruto raised his eyebrow at the childish speedster but kept quiet. He wasn't acquainted with any of the sidekicks except for Robin. Naruto said, bored, "Shall we get going then, Batman? I do have other things to do." It was too predictable even for the caped crusader. Naruto knew that Batman would be up to something and surprise. Surprise, he was right. The Hall of Justice was a front for the Justice League whilst the real headquarters was in space. It was classified and he doubted that any of the sidekicks knew about it except for Robin. Green Arrow's sidekick snarled, "Like what?" Naruto looked at the boy with a lazy eye. He asked, "What was your name again?" "Red Hood, Red, Speedy." That was it. Speedy's eyebrows twitched. "You damned." He was silenced when he was faulted to the ground by Naruto flexing his arm. Naruto said, "I can control gravity, Arrow Boy. There is nothing you can actually do that will harm me." Kid Flash announced, "Gravity manipulation, that is so cool." Naruto sighed and pushed past everyone as he made his way to the Hall of Justice. Batman and Wonder Woman both heard Naruto muttering something about immature brats and that he would collapse the building if he was put on a team with them. Batman sincerely hoped that Naruto wouldn't do such a thing. Inside Hall of Justice, Naruto was reading a book written by Arthur Schauffenauer as he watched Batman and the rest of the Justice League mutter a few unimportant things. However, Speedy or Arrow Boy had decided to get cranky and take out his justified frustration on the Justice League. Speedy or Roy Harper snarled, "That's it? You promised us a real look inside." Aquaman replied, "It's a first step." Martian Manhunter added, "You've been granted access that very few get." Roy snorted, gesturing to the window above where many people were taking pictures. He snarled, "Oh really? Who cares what side of the glass we're on?" Green Arrow pleaded, "Calm down, Roy." Roy snorted, "You're telling me to calm down? You and your pathetic league are treating us as if we're children. This isn't even the real headquarters." The last bit was directed towards the sidekicks. The sidekicks had a look of betrayal but nonetheless kept quiet. Aquaman said, "You're not helping your cause here," but Roy looked towards his fellow sidekicks and said, "Well?" Robin spoke, "Well what? It's a first step." Naruto closed his book and looked at Roy. He said, "What is your point, Arrow Boy? You're not going to change their mind. You're too immature to join the league. They think of every sidekick as cannon fodders that needs to be controlled." Roy looked at Naruto with a glare but nonetheless muttered, "You're right." He proceeded to walk out of the door. No one tried to stop, neither the older heroes nor the sidekicks who were stunned by Naruto's comment. Batman's eyes trailed towards Naruto, who was already seen to be turning heel. Naruto announced, "I am heading home. Please inform me on how the induction goes." His voice was dripping with a mixture of sarcasm and indifference. The sound of heavy armored footsteps echoed through the silent room. Batman narrowed his eyes at Naruto. He could have sworn he saw Naruto's visor flash red for a second. Hours later, Naruto silently stalked the streets of Washington, D.C. He was hungry after doing his usual exercises and homework routine. People walking around him, hurrying to work or to whatever they were usually doing, humans. How odd it was that he said it with such disdain. After reading the minds of so many people, Naruto beginning to see why the Uzumaki clan decided to hide themselves from the world. Naruto trudged through the streets so busy in thought until he was interrupted by a beeping on his watch. He pressed a button and saw Robin's face appear. "Cage, we need your help." Naruto sighed, "What is it?" "We've been captured by Cadmus. I'll send you the coordinates." I'll be right there. With a burst of speed, Uzumaki Naruto had disappeared from the street as if he was never there. Unknown to him, however, a small camera on the street sent a message to the owner, and that was when Naruto had finally been recognized by the infamous Amanda Waller. Cadmus Naruto, dressed in his armor, flew straight towards Cadmus, his HUD identifying Robin, Aqualad, Kid Flash and an unknown friendly in combat with one hideous blue monster. A grin formed as he increased his speed. Superboy was struggling to deal with Blockbuster. The being was for some odd reason too strong for the Superman clone. Blockbuster grabbed Superman's arm and threw him into the far wall. Aqualad quickly moved to the side as a blur smashed into Blockbuster's chest. The being was sent through the wall and into the air. The blur continued to follow the trajectory of the blue-skinned monster. Aqualad asked Robin, "Why did you call Cage? We didn't need him. The guy is probably going to kill Desmond." Robin face-palmed. He muttered, "Oh shit. He is going to kill Desmond. We need to go after him." "You're not going anywhere." A gruff voice scared the hell out of the teenagers. Batman and the Justice League had arrived. Robin turned around and quickly said, "We can explain." Superboy, who had just climbed out of the wall, said, "We don't need to explain anything." Batman and Superman's eyes traveled to the House of L insignia placed on the boy's chest. A frown was etched on Superman's face. Robin asked, "But we have to stop Naruto from killing Blockbuster." Superman answered, "Supergirl is handling it. Now please tell us what happened here." Robin scratched his head and said, "Well, back with Naruto. The beast landed in a children's playground. Naruto flew above it. So, you're the beast that Robin was talking about. You're not tough at all. I suppose it's time I finished you off." His silver blade glistened in the moonlight and he pointed it at the beast before beginning his descent. However, his HUD detected a blur about to him and he was forced to dodge. He hit the ground to the side of the beast. Naruto dusted himself and saw Supergirl look down at him. "Ah, Supergirl, what are you doing here?" Supergirl spoke with an authoritative voice, "I can't allow you to kill that beast." "Why can't you? It's not even human." "Yes, it is. It's a human transformed into a beast." Naruto questioned her logic. "Yes, but it is now a beast." Supergirl sighed, "I was told to stop you." Naruto grinned in his mask, "So do you want to fight?" "I haven't fought a worthy foe in a long time." A very dark aura appeared around him and gravity increased around him. The swings bent and the metal poles started to bend towards the ground. He disliked the girl immensely. She was his age and yet she was allowed into the Justice League. He doubted that it was because of her skill but because Superman was her cousin. Supergirl warily asked her fellow hero to stand down. Cage didn't like her for obvious reasons. He said she was spoiled and had no skill. She resented him because of his comments, but they never actually fought and she honestly didn't want to fight him. "I don't want to fight. Also, the Justice League is waiting." Naruto sighed, "Fine. You're going to take the beast then." And with those words he flew towards the destroyed Cadmus building. Supergirl looked at the icky beast. She thought perhaps I should have let Cage kill it. Cadmus Naruto arrived to see Superboy standing up to the Justice League and demanding that they be allowed to do missions. Naruto laughed internally at idiocy of letting this group do missions, but he knew that Batman was in a pickle, especially when Robin sided with the clone. Wonder Woman approached her student. She hissed at him, "Please tell me you weren't involved with this." Naruto answered with a smirk, "No, sadly this isn't my handiwork, although I must admit that they make a good demolition team, but I would have wiped this building out of existence and the clone wouldn't be standing here." Wonder Woman nodded. "We are going to talk about what you said in the Hall of Justice later." Naruto merely shrugged. Batman said, "Fine, but there will be some conditions as to what you can or cannot do. You can be overruled by any member of the Justice League." That last bit was directed towards Naruto. Supergirl, who heard Batman, looked smug but decided to keep her expression neutral when she saw Naruto's visor flash red. Naruto said, "If you excuse me, I have to head home." Everyone watched as Naruto blasted himself into the air. Superman gritted his teeth at the blatant disrespect the teenager held towards his elders, and WW narrowed her eyes dangerously. Her protege was doing this on purpose and she would find out why, one way or another. Wonder Woman quickly flew after Naruto. She arrived at her penthouse seconds after Naruto. She quickly moved to grab Naruto's shoulders. She watched as Naruto's masked face turned towards her, his visor flashing red. Ignoring the threat of violence, she asked softly, Naruto, what is going on with you today? Naruto replied, nothing. Leave me alone. No, I will not leave you alone until you tell me what has come over you today. Naruto questioned, why do you care? Diana's facial expression explained it all. She cared about him. I care about you, Naruto. There is something bothering you. I just want to help you. Sadly, this is a matter that only I can resolve. Besides, you are only doing this because I am only your so-called protege. You and the Justice League just want me in the palm of your hands so that you can use me whenever you want and discard of me when you please. Diana protested, that's not true. But Naruto didn't care. His apathy had only increased in the past few days. He saw no reason to care about these people. He saw no reason to live at all. His entire purpose of living had been destroyed. This is about Uzushiogakure, isn't it? Naruto didn't even reply as he walked upstairs. His silence spoke for itself. Diana had expected this. She knew that Naruto would resent this world just like she had. She was surprised that it had taken this long for him to become depressed. She at least had her people, her family, and something to fight for. Naruto had nothing, and from the looks of things, he was beginning to question why he was fighting anyway. Naruto's room. Naruto stared at the only photo he had of his mother. He looked at how happy she looked, how happy they looked. His mind flashed to the memory of his mother being atomized, and he unconsciously clenched his fists. Damn him. Why did he have to destroy everything? He hated Ryu for doing what he did. If only he could justice for what that man had did to his family, he would have made him suffer. Unbeknownst to the young Uzumaki, Ryu was helped by outside forces that wanted Uzushiogakure destroyed. 3 days later, Mount Justice, Naruto, Kid Flash, Robin, Superboy and Aqualad all lined up in front of Batman, who explained to them the terms of service. You will do this on League terms. He pointed to Red Tornado. Red Tornado has volunteered to live here and supervise you. Black Canary will be your fighting instructor, and I will deploy you on missions. Batman finished with a tone of finality. He gazed at each of the young sidekicks and paused at Cage, who gave him the tiniest of nods. You will be deployed on covert operations. Aquaman began to explain. The existence of Cadmus and their operations has shown us of the need for a team that is capable of acting under the radar. Batman finished. The 6 of you will be that team. Kid Flash excitedly exclaimed, awesome, I can't wait to kick ass. Robin asked the more obvious question, wait, you said 6. Batman pointed to the Zeta Tube, and the team turned to see the Martian Manhunter escorting a young female Martian with red hair. That is the Martian's niece, Miss Martian. I believe she will be a unique asset on missions. Everyone began to introduce themselves to the new addition. Miss Martian seemed very flustered with all the attention. Naruto turned heel and walked towards the Zeta Tube. Batman said, Cage. Naruto turned towards the Caped Crusader. What? Batman said, the Justice League has decided to put you on this team to see whether you can be inducted into the League. There are conditions. Naruto snorted. A scorching fire emitted from his armor. Do not think me so weak to beg, Batman. Batman narrowed his eyes as Cage left the mountain. Unknown location in the middle of a dark room. Several screens with silhouettes made out of light watched the footage of Cage fighting Cheetah, and his attack on Blockbuster was played throughout the room. A deep and gruff voice asked, I thought all the Uzumaki had been destroyed. A childish, boyish voice replied, he is the last one. I have been keeping tabs on him, and might I say, he is more than I expected. A feminine voice said uncaringly, he was not responsible for the destruction of our Cadmus facility. I don't see what is so interesting about this Cage. The boy replied, of course you wouldn't, you don't appreciate anything besides your goddamned hive. A growl was emitted from the screen with the silhouette of a woman. The first voice replied, from the intel we have received, Cage can still be swayed to our side. Another voice agreed, yes. He would be an irreplaceable asset, and his unique physiology would allow us to create more powerful clones. No one voiced any opposition. The first voice announced, very well. It is decided. Uzumaki Naruto will see the light one way or another. Metropolis STAR Labs, July 10, 2300. They say that knowledge is power, and it wasn't until a few days ago that Naruto realized how much it applied to him. He may be a metahuman that could fight with the upper echelon of superpowered beings, but he was destitute of information. Information that could provide him with the means to leave the Justice League. Currently, Batman had all the keys. He could always go rogue, but without any contacts and any means of hiding, Naruto would be running without a sense of direction. He would essentially be blind, and he would rather not have the Justice League hot on his tails every day and night. Even he was not naive enough to believe that he could beat all of the Justice League. Wonder Woman was the only person that could kill him, and some like Superman had enough power to severely injure him. He had therefore decided that he should procure some information on the Justice League. STAR Labs were known to have a large database on metahumans. He had recently developed an affinity for computer hacking. He realized that STAR Labs was virtually unhackable from the outside, and so you would need to infiltrate the building. He was dressed in a common thief's clothes, a pair of gloves and a black balaclava. He had managed to already get into the building. It had been relatively simple. Many scientists did overnight shifts, and since he was not exactly a metahuman, he didn't trigger the alarm. He stole on of the computer scientist's ID badge and used short electric to bursts to disrupt the electric systems. He had already knocked out the security guard and placed a constructed loop. So here he was inside the main server room. He would install his already pre-programmed Trojan into the server and download as much information as he could. He just hoped that everything would go according to plan. Unfortunately, even the best laid plans could go awry. He had installed the Trojan and subsequently began to copy all the relevant data. He sent out several other Trojans and download irrelevant data to get STAR Labs of his tail. When he removed the USB stick from the terminal and unplugged his laptop, it was time to pack it up and leave. He threw all of his gear into his backup and walked towards the server room door. He ran out of the room and ran to the stairs. He had around 5 minutes until someone noticed the unconscious guard. As he was approaching the last 5 floors, he heard from the bug he had planted in the security guard's office. "Rick, do you still have some of?" Naruto cursed. He increased his speed and jumped the last 2 floors. He heard, "Intruder, intruder on the ground floor." Shit. They would activate defense mechanisms. He would need to use his powers. The question is, what powers should he use? He decided on electricity and super speed. He sped out of the stairwells and emerged in the lobby area. Superhuman powers detected. A scanner was about to scan him, but Naruto was not having that. He released a powerful wave of electricity that short-circuited all of the equipment. Freeze. The clicking of a gun was heard behind him. Naruto sighed, and in a flash the monst's weapons were dismantled and Naruto was behind him. He saw the doors were closing and a metal door was beginning to lower. Using his superhuman speed, he ran through the door and sighed in relief as he managed to escape STAR Labs. He would have thought that their security system would be advanced enough to tackle Superman, but he guessed wrong. Then again, he was reminded why exactly they didn't need such an advanced security system when Supergirl appeared in front of him. She said calmly, "Turn yourself in and I won't have to harm you." Naruto didn't want to have to deal with her, so he used the one thing he brought to counteract her. A very powerful flashbang. It would cause her to momentarily lose her sight. He threw it at her face and it exploded. A bright explosion of light covered her vision and she was forced to cover her eyes. By the time she had recovered from it, Naruto had disappeared into an alleyway 10 blocks away. Supergirl growled as she flew up into the air. She knew how he looked like. She would find him. Using her X-ray vision and superhuman magnification, she scanned the city. It was a slow process. She was looking for the man. Unfortunately, he had seemingly disappeared like a ghost. July 11th, Mount Justice, 10 a.m. I tell you, Batman, he was a pro. He didn't leave a single clue behind. Supergirl told Batman about everything that had occurred. He fried the security footage. He didn't leave any DNA and he managed to stun me. Batman was impressed, although he would never express it. This young thief had showed the panache of an expert strategist. He had planned everything from cover to cover. Even if he was found, which would be very hard to do, he wouldn't be able to put him in jail. Any evidence the detective had gained beside what he actually stole would be circumstantial. Superman and Supergirl had 2 main weaknesses: kryptonite and magic. This thief exploited one of their strengths. He knew about Kryptonians' overpowered senses and he used that against them. Batman gruffly answered, "I will look into it." He marched towards the Zeta Tube, intent on investigating this later on, but he needed to head over to the company first. Supergirl wanted some food and she smelt something very delicious coming from the kitchen. Naruto was using his superhuman hearing to listen on the conversation. A smile played on his lips. Despite the minor setback and the fact that he never wanted to be seen by anyone in the Justice League, He was still happy that everything was going according to his plan, or at least the rough outlines he had come up with. He flipped the egg and the bacon, making sure that they were cooked to his standards. He heard, "Something smells good in here. Damn it." He turned around and he and Supergirl exchanged eye contact. She asked, "Who are you?" It was of course the first time she had seen him without his visor on or his full body armor. Batman had advised that he need not wear his visor in front of his new team. Supergirl stared at the teenager in front of her. He was quite tall, around 6'3". He had gravity-defying spiky blood-red hair and glaring purple amethyst eyes. He had a very muscular build, not as muscular as Superman but muscular enough to tell Supergirl that he was a fighter. Naruto smiled. "Oh, I forgot you don't recognize me without my visor. K." Supergirl almost stepped. "Cage? Yes, that's me." To Supergirl, the awkwardness of being with her rival Cage was enough for her to want to leave. "So tell me, Supergirl, what is a member of the Justice League doing here?" Supergirl sighed. "It doesn't matter, I should probably get going." Naruto decided to cut the teen some slack. "You can stay, I made enough for two." Supergirl said nervously, "I don't want to interrupt your breakfast." Naruto chuckled. "It's fine. Take a seat and I'll finish up for you." Supergirl looked at Cage with surprise. He seemed very mellow compared to his fiery persona as a superhero. If he hadn't given her the clues to figure out his identity, she would have sworn that he was a different person. Thanks, Cage," Naruto said. "My name is Naruto." Supergirl decided to reciprocate. "I am Kara." A part of her wondered why he was being so friendly, and a creeping suspicion was beginning to sink in before she quashed it. Naruto quickly plated the food and led Supergirl to the dining room. "This is great." Kara complimented his cooking as she finished her breakfast at record speed. Naruto merely chuckled as he sipped some orange juice. He asked, "So what made you decide to come here?" Kara replied, "There was an incident in Metropolis last night and I needed Batman's help." Her Justice League signaling device began to vibrate, telling her that she was needed at the watchtower. She looked at him apologetically, but Naruto gave her the briefest of nods and she flew out of the room at breakneck speeds. Naruto grinned. It was necessary for his plan that he acted as if there was nothing going on. He needed the Justice League to trust him and to feel as though he didn't hate them. He finished his drink and headed towards the exercise room. Recognized B03 Aqualad. Recognized B02 Kid Flash, B01 Robin. Naruto saw the three of them emerge from the Zeta beam. They seemed rather unhappy but their venture to pick up Speedy and recruit to the team. Naruto could tell that they failed. Kid Flash sped up to Naruto. "Is he here yet?" Naruto replied, "Red Tornado isn't, but he should be here soon. I am going to the training room." Wally looked at his other fellow teammates. "Well, isn't he peachy?" Robin shrugged. "Let him be, Wally. We both know he doesn't exactly want to be here." Wally bluntly said, "Or belong here." Aqualad looked at him with disappointment and Wally quickly finished, "I mean, it's just that he is too powerful to be here. I doubt Batman is going to let us fight any of the heavy hitters." Both Robin and Aqualad doubted that he meant it that way but kept their mouths shut before walking to the holographic computer. 1 hour later, training room. Naruto was about done with his katas. He had practiced his weapon throwing and his kenjutsu beforehand. He stopped when he heard the mechanical whirring noise behind him. Red Tornado's mechanical voice echoed throughout the room. "You must be Cage. The other members of the team seem to be bonding without you." Naruto replied, "And that concerns you?" Red Tornado merely replied, "Yes, it lowers the odds of you being able to successfully work as a unit." Naruto turned the red mechanical being and shrugged. Now we both know that the Justice League doesn't do a lot of team building exercises. I believe you are more worried about my behavior, that my apathy for my teammates would cause them to be in danger." "An accurate assessment. I was told that you were quite perceptive. Will that be a problem?" Naruto grinned as he spun his katana. "No, not at all. If they are useful in a mission, I will be sure to use them to their fullest capacity. It's like playing a game of chess really. For now they are merely pawns." Red Tornado finished, "But they may promote to a piece of higher significance." Naruto smiled at the droid. "Exactly." He grabbed a towel and walked out of the room. Red Tornado muttered, "A most worrying assessment, but an accurate one nonetheless." Naruto's cynical view on how the team was viewed by the Justice League was relatively accurate, but to Red Tornado it was worrisome was that if they weren't useful, what action would Naruto take against them? Would he leave on the battlefield bleeding? Would he support them? He would watch the young teenager more closely? 10 minutes later, Naruto. There is a disturbance in the Happy Harbor power plant. The team has already been sent ahead of you. By the time Red Tornado had finished giving the order, Naruto was already out of Mount Justice and was flying towards the power plant at Mach 3. With the rest of the team, they were getting beaten left, right and center. This new android that called itself Twister was capable of generating tornadoes and high-powered wind blasts. Wally charged at the android, but he was deflected by a powerful wave of wind. The android moved to its side to avoid a punch from Superboy before throwing him away. Twister was capable of reading their movements, and their simplistic patterns allowed it to easily calculate the next mode of action. "Where is Red Tornado? I didn't come here to fight children." Wally growled, "We are not children." If the android were capable of making anyone, it would have, but it instead voted to simply blast Kid Flash into a steel beam. Robin shouted, "Kid!" He threw some batarangs at Twister's armor but found that the android's armor was too strong to be cut through. Twister fired a tornado at Robin, who used one of the beams to acrobatically throw himself out of the way. He rolled out of the way of another jet of wind before throwing some pellets of smoke at the android. Robin shouted, "Now Superboy." Twister, however, had enough of playing around and grabbed Superboy's incoming fist and punched him in the abdomen, sending him flying into the wall. This game has gone far enough. He flew out of the building and found himself moving towards the side as a blur smashed into the ground. Another child coming out to play. Cage grinned, "Since you were able to defeat the others, I will indulge you. Show me your best." Twister flew into the air. "Very well." Wind twisters blew out of his gauntlets and into the atmosphere. Naruto observed as the skies darkened and lightning began to accumulate around him. Kid Flash and the team who had regained their bearings ran out of the room. A jet of lightning began to rip through the air and was aimed towards Naruto, who merely deflected with his sword. A powerful jet of energy zoomed towards Twister, who merely threw a bolt of lightning towards it. An explosion rippled before Twister, and in a second Naruto was before him and the two began a duel in the air. Twister's wind against Naruto's black fire. Kid Flash said in awe, "Did you know Cage could do that?" Robin shook his head, "It's a first for me." Twister dodged a sword strike but was kicked towards the ground by Naruto's high-speed roundhouse kick. The android admitted, "You are very powerful." Naruto, instead of speaking, flew toward the android at Mach 4 speeds with his sword ready to decapacitate its head. Twisters fired a powerful stream of wind towards Naruto, but his katana was surrounded by black fire that lit the wind up as if it were oil. The team watched in fascination as a black stream of fire flew towards Twister, and before the android could react, his armor was melting. Naruto's sword impacted into the android's core, causing it to die. With a snap of his finger, the black flames disappeared. Kid Flash sped up to the standing Naruto and the now disassembled android. He said, "Dude, that was sick." Naruto's visor and flashed red. Kid Flash gulped as he saw daunting and threatening Naruto looked with his armor. "I was just doing my job. Return the broken pieces back to the cave. I believe that Red Tornado would want to have a closer look." He turned to the others and said, "I trust that you learnt your lesson now." Superboy growled, "And what would that be?" Naruto merely replied, "That charging into battle without any strategy is a bad idea. There will come a time when I cannot swoop in and save you all. If you don't take this seriously, you will die." With that, Naruto flew away from a team that had lost their jovial happiness about their victory as they came to terms with Naruto's words. He was after all correct. The truth as to why Batman hadn't assigned any missions began to enter their minds. They simply weren't ready. Hours later, Washington, D.C. Dojo. Naruto flipped over to avoid a sword strike. He kicked Wonder Woman's back and she was forced to roll over to avoid Naruto's incoming heel kick. The two warriors duked it out. Sounds of metal clanging and grunting could be heard from outside. The dojo was part of an abandoned warehouse that Bruce Wayne had brought and renovated for her use. The walls were soundproof and had multiple racks of different weapons in front of them. She grabbed Naruto's thrusted arm and in one fluent motion disarmed him. She spun her blade and aimed the circular hilt at his kidney. Naruto grunted at the jab but was quickly thrown into the wall. He grabbed a bowstaff and spun it for good measure. Wonder Woman grinned as she dashed towards him at breakneck speeds. Naruto used his bowstaff to keep the distance between her. She dashed underneath his jab and was about to hit him again, but Naruto anticipated the movement and grabbed her arm in a twisting motion, causing the blade to drop. Wonder Woman wasn't done as she swiped his leg and Naruto fell to the ground. She straddled him and with her arm held both of his arms above his head in a steel-like grip. Her other arm had already grabbed the downed sword and was pointing at Naruto's neck. Naruto could feel her hot breath on his face as she leant down and looked into his purple eyes with a mixture of mirth and daringness, as if she was daring him to escape. He said, "It's your win, Wonder Woman." She smiled and released her grip on his hand. "It was a good duel as always, Naruto." She threw him a water bottle to her side and Naruto caught it. "Batman told me about your fight with the android named Twister. He expressed concerns about how you treated your teammates." Naruto gulped down some water. He responded, "I told them the truth. They think just because they fought a few villains over the years that they can win any battle. They dived head first into battle and expected that they would emerge victorious. It's wishful thinking." Wonder Woman sat beside her partner. "You must understand, Naruto, that unlike the two of us, they weren't trained from when they could walk. They lead normal lives and for the most part, they don't fight villains. You can't expect them to fight as well as you and you can't expect them to fight as good as the others in Uzushiogakure. When I first joined the Justice League, I saw the same thing you see with your team. I saw a team of powerful people and capable of working as a unit. It was only due to Batman's tactical knowledge that we were able to win. So give them a chance." Naruto sighed. "Fine." Diana smiled. She stood up. "I am heading over to Metropolis. I trust that you will be fine." Naruto merely nodded. He watched as she headed out of the dojo and towards the shower room, no doubt getting ready to go see Superman. Naruto found himself wondering whether he was beginning to develop feelings for Diana. He thought, "That's absurd. I would never fall for an Amazon. Besides, she was with Superman anyway." He looked at the fallen bow staff and picked it up. He spun it around his neck and impaled it into the wall. He quashed all of the emotions he was currently feeling as a darkness spread through his body. He had a plan, and the plan was the most important thing right now. It was more important than the powerful feeling of loneliness that he was feeling. He thought, "Back in Uzushiogakure, you were royalty, you were important, but here you were nothing." It had taken a while to come to terms with that, but he realized that it had its perks. He was in effect a ghost, and ghosts didn't leave a trail. Wonder Woman's apartment. DC Washington. Batman had easily snuck into the apartment. Wonder Woman and Naruto both relied on their skill to ward off intruders rather any form of technology. He walked into Naruto's room. He saw a tripwire and jumped over it. Well, it appeared Naruto was quite paranoid. The young Uzumaki's room was quite plain. A queen-sized bed was situated in the middle of the room. A rather intricate computer set up onto the left side beside the wooden wardrobe. He walked to the computer and pressed a few buttons. He narrowed his eyes when he saw the level of encryption that Naruto had put on the machine. He returned the computer back to sleep mode before walking around the room. He stopped at what seemed to be an Othello board with checker, chess and shogi pieces being placed around the board in a seemingly random way. The detective retreated from the room and thought, "What game are you playing, Naruto?" He couldn't stop feeling the nagging feeling that Naruto was planning something big. Back at the dojo, Naruto grinned as a kanji seal on his arm glowed red. He activated the camera bug in his room and found Batman walking out of his room. His experiment had worked. He figured out that Batman was a master of infiltration, but he was incapable of detecting any of his seals. A weakness that Naruto would happily expose. It was time for his next move. Uzumaki Academy. Branch classroom. The Uzumaki Academy was where the branch members trained their children. They taught them how to use their unique powers, their abilities, and most importantly how to wield chakra to its fullest potential. The royal family were more independent and were trained in the citadel. That wasn't to say that they never brought their children to the academy. The Uzumaki clan had a tradition of yearly tournaments. The branch members would pit themselves against the royal family. In one classroom, the leader of the branch family, Ryu Uzumaki, was sitting in front of a classroom filled with children. He was giving them a lecture of the importance of learning how to control one's chakra. A student eagerly asked, "Ryu-sama, could you show us a jutsu?" The old Uzumaki sighed and smiled. "This technique is one of my favorite and most versatile in my arsenal. It's called the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu." He crossed two fingers from both hands in a cross-like fashion and spiked his chakra. In a plume of smoke, two identical versions of Ryu stood on both sides of him. The image began to fade and another one became clearer. Ryu stood on a large pedestal in front of hundreds of people. He shouted, "For too long we have suffered under the tyranny of the royal family. They take out as ours and claim it belongs to them. They brand as slaves whilst they enjoy their lavish lifestyle. I say no more. I say we take back what is ours. A roar of approval followed. Naruto. Robin's voice caused the Uzumaki to jolt out of his dream, memory viewing. He was getting more and more vivid memories as of late. He was learning things that he had never learned before. Batman wants in the hall for a briefing. We have a mission. Finally, Naruto thought. Naruto followed Robin, wincing slightly as information about the Kage Bunshin Jutsu flooded his mind, as well as the variations that other Uzumakis had created. Naruto had learned that he would get memories and information via certain cues. They were sometimes random, but it was usually an object, a word, or a place of familiarities. Isla Santa Prisca. This island nation is the primary source of a dangerous and illegal steroid, a strength-enhancing drug sold under the street name Venom. Batman explained what the island was. He continued, infrared heat signatures indicate their factory is still operating at full capacity, but all shipments of Venom have been inexplicably cut off. A holographic projection of the factory was showed to the team. Batman turned to the team. He told them the mission's objectives. This is a covert recon mission only. Observe and report. If the Justice League needs to intervene, they will. Naruto zoned out of the rest of the meeting. His HUD was accessing the League's database. He was currently reading files about Santa Prisca. They were not only the largest distributor of Venom but were suspected of money laundering. A grin quirked Naruto's lips. He thought, where there were drugs there was usually a large amount of money. His plan was progressing rather well. Naruto saw the team heading off to the bioship and Batman walking away. Naruto asked, why us? Batman turned. He replied monotonously, I am sure you'll figure that out. With that, the caped crusader walked away. Naruto's grin faded. Batman had been keeping tabs on him ever since he had invaded his room. When Naruto returned back to the penthouse, he wasn't surprised to find the house was bugged and rather well. He would have shown it to Wonder Woman, but considering that she was beginning to spend more and more time in Metropolis and only came to Washington when she had a diplomatic meeting or for their routine spar, he didn't really see the need. Naruto had seen the team were still edgy but were beginning to train more. Calder and Robin lead the team through a number of simulations whilst Naruto monitored their actions and flaws. He wouldn't say that they were combat ready or even capable of working as a unit, but they were getting there. Bioship drop zone in 30. Calder stood up and pressed the golden trident on his belt. His usual red armor turned black. He said confidently, ready. Emgen nodded and the bioship responded to her command. The floor in front of him opened and Aqualad jumped out into the ocean. The ship was already in camouflage mode. A few minutes later they heard Aqualad, heat and motion sensors are off. Remote weapon systems are down. Cage's voice echoed through the comms. It was his plan to fly ahead. He breached the system by applying seals on his body that made him look as though he possessed no heat signature. Well, rendezvous at Drop Zone B. Emgen confirmed, roger that. She announced, Drop Zone B. They all unbuckled. Kid Flash pressed his chest logo of the Flash and his colorful yellow and red suit turned black. He looked at Superboy and said, it's not too late to wear the new stealth tech. Superboy replied coolly, no tights, no capes, no offense. It totally works for you. Emgen said dreamily. Superboy looked at her pointedly almost, which caused her to continue nervously, in that you can do good work in those clothes. Naruto's monotonous voice interrupted their little party, less talking and more moving. I am already at the rendezvous point. Megan and Kid Flash looked sheepishly as Naruto ordered them to get down. Robin frowned as he buckled up. It appeared that Naruto was already taking leadership of the team, even if he had expressed to him privately that he doesn't want to command. He remembered their conversation a few days. Flashback. Training room, you're improving. Naruto moved quickly to dodge two Batrangs and caught one with his fingers. Robin charged at the older and much taller teenager and engaged him in close-quarter combat. Naruto showed his superiority by evading all of Robin's attacks. Robin growled, are you just going to dodge? Naruto smirked, you're not giving me a reason not to. A timer went off and Robin almost kicked the floor in frustration. Naruto said, as I said, you're improving, Robin. Robin grounded out, clearly not enough. Naruto smiled, this isn't about me anymore, is it? It was more of a statement than a question. Robin answered smoothly, I was reckless and stupid when I was fighting against Twister. I should have utilized the team's abilities more effectively. It was a lesson like any other, Robin. You learned that even though you were trained by Batman, that there are limitations to your abilities. This team doesn't have a leader, it doesn't have someone that can rally them at a single notice, and as such it remains disjointed. Robin looked at Naruto with a curious expression. So who do you think can lead this team? Batman told me that he saw you as a very capable strategist. Naruto shook his head. I will not be the leader of this team. It will be either you or Calder. The others lack the focus and the strategical know-how to lead a team through covert missions. Robin smirked. So you think I can lead this team? Naruto reciprocated the boy wonder's smirk. Well, just have to see. Flashback ended. Boom. Superboy's landing had caused a large sonic wave to spread across a large radius. Superboy said, I told you I didn't need a line. Naruto's voice came from the shadows behind them, and yet you just announced a presence to everyone in the nearby vicinity. I know that you are just a few months old, but did Cadmus not teach you the meaning of the word covert? Everyone turned in surprise as Naruto blended out of the darkness behind them. Robin was the first to notice the difference in attire as he stepped out into the light. He was dressed more like a heavily armored titan and more like a member of the League of Shadows. He was dressed in black garb made out of what seemed to be cloth. He wore armor around his knees, elbow, shin, and a pair of gauntlets on his hand. The only thing that told them it was Cage was his visor. It made Robin wonder whether Naruto was trained to be an assassin. A shiver ran up his spine as he thought of Naruto as a more dangerous form of Deathstroke. The boy wonder narrowed his eyes and decided to focus on the mission. Superboy growled at Naruto, balling his fists at the mention of his pervious captors. Naruto shrugged. I know they tried to make a clone of Superman, but they should have really modulated your behavior better. It comes as no surprise that Superman doesn't want anything to do with you. Superboy was about to jump at Naruto, but Kid Flash said, guys, should we really be fighting? Superboy turned to Kid to glare at him, but found that his momentary distraction allowed for Naruto to slip away. Robin noticed as Naruto gave a salute. Mgen said, Aqualad, drop B is go. Aqualad replied, head for the factory, I'll track your GPS and rendezvous with you. Roger that. The group of four dashed into the forest, disappearing into the night. With Naruto was doing his own work. He had tried and failed to create clones, which would have helped greatly with his little side quest to find and acquire the money in the factory. He jumped from one tree to the next before stopping when he saw a squadron of two groups heading towards each other. They wore different clothes and seemed to be ready for combat. Naruto knew that they weren't looking for them, which meant that they were going to attack each other. Well, at least Batman was right. His HUD zoomed into the face of a large muscular man with what seemed to be wrestler's mask on. Information was uploaded. It came as no surprise to see Bane here, considering he was the main user of Venom and the main distributor of it in Gotham. Oh God. Naruto almost facepalmed when Kid Flash stumbled in front of Bane. Both groups startled when Bane began shooting. Bullets could be heard throughout the jungle. Naruto sighed as he jumped down into the forest. Robin, Superboy and Miss Martian entered the fray. The skirmish between the two opposing groups halted as they combined their efforts in quashing the intruders. Naruto skillfully landed. The group of people wearing red robes began to fire rapidly at him. Naruto sighed as a beam of energy erupted from his visor. It knocked half of them a few hundred meters away. He ducked to avoid getting him by the back of automatic rifle before swiping the mon's legs. His punch sent him sailing into the tree. One of them escaped running into the forest, but Naruto was not worried about him considering that Aqualad was running after the escapee. He stopped a hail of bullets with his gravity manipulation and crushed them. Naruto mimicked a pushing motion with his hand and a wave of gravity knocked all of the group back to the ground and unconscious. Robin flipped over a target as he leveraged the momentum from his jump to throw one of the goons into the tree. He cried, "Why didn't you guys follow my lead and vanish into the jungle?" Wally sarcastically said, "Is that what you were doing? We're not mind readers, you know." Miss Martian became visible and knocked two goons into the tree with her TK. Kid Flash looked at her. "Well, not all of us anyway." They heard a rustling from behind and then the crackling of electricity as Aqualad knocked his target out. Robin looked at the downed goon with the red robe. He said, "Wait, I know these guys. They're from the cult of Cobra." Aqualad said skeptically, "I believe Batman would have informed us if such a group as extreme as the cult of Cobra were running the island." Naruto replied, "They took it forcefully." He threw a cultist into the ground. All of them saw the man muttering gibberish as if his brain were fried. Robin asked suspiciously, "What did you do to him?" Standard interrogation. The rest of the team looked apprehensively at the cultist and Naruto. Wally asked, "What do we do now? Since you decided to inform all of the island of our presence, Wally, we have two choices: go to the factory and get ready for a large amount of resistance, or withdraw and inform Batman that the team was incapable of performing a simple reconnaissance mission." Kid Flash shouted at Naruto, "Hey, I know you don't want to be placed onto this team and all, but you don't get to always mock us. We never wanted you in the first place." Superboy seemingly agreed with Kid's opinion. Naruto snorted, "Fine, find your own way into the factory. I am going by myself." He sped out into the forest. Kid shouted, "Can you believe that guy? He thinks he is all high and mighty." Robin replied coolly, "Well, it was kind of your fault. Well, excuse me if I don't stack up to your expectation. We are not all trained by Batman." It was true. Robin was the only one in this team that was trained in covert operations except for Naruto. The rest of the team were forced to improvise, and the fact that this type of environment along with the pressure made them prone to making mistakes. Robin looked at his mini-computer and sighed. Cage switched off his GPS. "We're on our own now." Aqualad looked to his team. "How will we get into the factory?" Robin pointed to the tied-up Bane. "Hell help us." Factory Naruto had easily breached the security. He had opted for sneaking past the guards than knocking them out. The amount of product that they were currently moving was insane. He would leave the information gathering to Robin and the team. He needed to find what he came here for before the group breaches the factory. Back with the team, Bane had agreed to help them get into the factory. He claimed that the enemy of his enemy were his allies, for now at least. Robin knew that the Spanish-speaking wrestler would betray them the second they got clear, but for now he begrudgingly accepted Bane's help. The factory would after all be on high alert after Kid Flash blew their cover. He just hoped that Naruto had knocked a large portion of them out before they had gotten there. Robin and the team stood on a cliff and he watched through binoculars as a large amount of shipment was being taken from the factory. He said, "Look at all that product." He surveyed the area that the shipment was going. A buy is going down, but if Cobra is not selling it to the normal suspects, we need to identify the buyers. Kid Flash added, "Just what I was thinking." Robin replied sarcastically, "Because you're the thinker of the team." Wally interjected sarcasm, "Dude. A real leader would focus on getting answers." Bane picked a large boulder and removed it from a cave entrance. He told the two squabbling children in the team, "Answers are this way." "Oh great." Wally muttered, "So now El Luchador is our leader." Robin shoved him in the arm to tell him to focus at the mission. The team walked through the tunnel trailing closely behind Bane. They entered a massive warehouse where venom was being pumped through red vats. Robin announced, "All clear." He rolled to the side and disappeared as the team walked into the warehouse. Bane frowned. "Has the little fool already been caught?" Aqualad sighed, "No, he just does that." Kid Flash put his infrared goggles and said, "Wait here, I'll get the information we need before the Boy Wonder returns." Aqualad tried to say, "No kid, wait," but the young speedster ran deeper into the factory. Bane sarcastically said, "Great chain of command." The three remaining team members looked at each other. They needed a plan, and fast. Bane led them across the factory. They snuck behind the pipes and ducked behind a crater. They saw Cobra followers moving the shipment. "They're only moving the new shipment, they aren't touching the old ones." Miss Martian tried to be helpful by adding, "Maybe freshness counts." Bane felt like snorting at the girl's stupidity but kept his mouth shut as Superboy announced, "Helicopters coming." They all locked towards the open hangar room and saw a helicopter arriving. Meanwhile, Robin was currently hacking into Cobra's computer systems. Kid Flash sped into the room. "Find anything?" he asked. "Chemical formulas." Kid Flash sped up to the computer as he ate some of his bar. "I am guessing it has something to do with venom." Kid Flash pointed his chocolate bar at the screen. "That's the chemical formula of venom, and that's the blockbuster formula from Cadmus. The combination makes the drug 3 times more powerful and permanent." Robin deduced. "The buyer must also be the supplier then. They must have been looking to improve upon the original serum." He tried to speak through the communication link to his teammates. Robin to Aqualad, static. Someone was radio jamming them. They couldn't communicate anymore. Rooftop. As the military-grade chopper landed, an infamous assassin stepped out. He wore what appeared to a gray hockey mask and arm-length gauntlets. His vest appeared to laced with Kevlar. He marched towards Cobra, who was flanked by two of his most powerful henchmen. He greeted, "Lord Cobra." The humanoid snake replied, "Sportsmaster." A woman with bright orange hair held a briefcase. She opened it, revealing vials filled with purple liquid. "The shipment is ready." Sportsmaster took a vial and inspected it. "The new Cobra venom. Finally, with this, we can fight the Justice League." In the air, Miss Martian remained invisible and watched the meeting. She relayed, "Aqualad, I am sending the mental image of the buyer to you now." Aqualad replied, "So what's the plan now?" Bane smirked, "I have a plan." He leapt over the ledge and began to attack the two Cobra henchmen below. Aqualad hissed, "What is he doing?" Cobra became alerted and Mammoth smashed through the window to engage in a brawl with the villain. Superboy and Aqualad's ledge was destroyed and they were sent to the ground. Cobra's henchmen began to flood the room. Cobra shouted, "Destroy them." He never noticed a shadow move behind him. Sportsmaster sensed a disturbance and was forced to dodge as a katana almost slashed his head off. The assassin grinned, a fellow assassin. Naruto had spent the better part of the last 20 minutes placing explosive tags across the factory. He had found where Cobra kept his money, a small vault in a hut outside the factory. He sealed what appeared to be close to $500,000 into a scroll before heading back to the team. Sportsmaster answered, "So you must be Cage." Naruto's eyes narrowed at the mention of his codename. "Who do you work for?" Sportsmaster replied, "You'll have to beat it out of me." He draws out a metal rod that folds out into a javelin. He threw it not at Naruto but the invisible Miss Martian. She managed to dodge it but was thrown across the room when the javelin exploded. "It would be my pleasure." The two warriors dashed towards each other but Sportsmaster soon found himself overwhelmed. Superboy rolled out of the way and attempted to tackle Mammoth to the ground. Mammoth, however, reversed the young Kryptonian's plan and threw Superboy into Aqualad. More Cobra henchmen entered the room and they found themselves getting overwhelmed. Aqualad telepathically shouted, "Miss Martian, link us all together." A powerful gravity wave sent dozens of henchmen flying as they tried to stop Naruto from attacking Sportsmaster. The assassin flipped out of the way and replied, "Using your powers against a feeble human, tisk tisk. I thought you had more honor than that, Cage." Naruto sheathed his sword and raised his fists for combat. "I don't need my powers to beat you." "So you say." Sportsmaster dashed towards him and Naruto was quick on his feet to evade a roundhouse kick before he grabbed the mon's outstretched limb and brought him down to the ground. He jerked his leg with surprising strength, causing the assassin's body to fly upwards and Naruto's boot smashed into his armored back. Sportsmaster groaned. Had it not been for his armor, his spine would have been severely compromised. Cobra meanwhile was getting tired of this nuisance. He saw the familiar face of the boy Wonder and said mockingly, "Batman must be getting desperate if he sends you here." Robin pointed back towards all the fighting. "The way I see it, your buyer seems to be having a hard time against us." Cobra exclaimed mockingly, "It doesn't matter. So long as I know the formula, I can always make more." Aqualad to all, "We need to retreat and regroup." Naruto's cold voice echoed throughout his mind, "No, you guys go. I'll hold them off." Everyone was surprised that Naruto was willing to do that for them. Aqualad replied, "You heard Cage. Let's go." As each of them began to retreat, Naruto was forced to release Sportsmaster as Mammoth tried to barrel into him. He flipped over the beast and placed a tag on him. Sportsmaster, Mammoth, Cobra and his goons began to regroup in front of him. Naruto sensed that his team was a fair distance away. Cobra shouted, "Take the shipment and go." He threw Sportsmaster the case and ordered the assassin to run. Naruto was going to fly after him but Mammoth shot forward. He groaned as the beast grappled him to the ground. Naruto did a hand sign and said, "Fuinjutsu. Fukasoku no Koteikaken." Mammoth screamed as his arms were bent backwards and what appeared to be steel crossing around him. He broke some of the steel off but found that it regenerated. Cobra decided to run towards the chopper but found the team there fighting off Sportsmaster and Shimmer. Naruto waved his hand and a massive amount of gravity threw Cobra and his goons to the side. Naruto replied, "You have nowhere to go, Cobra." The villain grew angry at the teenager in front of him. His plan had been foiled by mere kids. Such blasphemy could not be tolerated in his eyes. He would make Naruto bow before him. He took off his robe and raised his hands to get ready for combat. The sound of a chopper rang throughout the factory. Cobra chuckled. It appears your teammates are as not skilled as you believe them to be. You can either stay here and fight me or you can try and stop the shipment. Naruto flew out of the window to see Shimmer getting tied up by Robin. An injured Superboy was holding Miss Martian. Naruto saw the plane flying in the distance. His visor flashed red as a jet of blue light ripped from him and strayed at the chopper. Miss Martian grinned as she activated the C4 and the plane blew up. Naruto turned to see that Cobra had vanished and would most likely not be found. Naruto, in hopes of catching Cobra, decided to activate the paper tags that were placed around the plant. An explosion shook the area where the chopper flying straight into the plant. Had Naruto been paying attention, he would have seen Sportsmaster jump out of the plane and into the forest. Aqualad and Kid Flash appeared before them. Bane is secure. Aqualad told them, the Justice League should be arriving soon. Robin cackled, I am glad I didn't take up the leadership position. He looked pointedly at Aqualad. I'd hate to have to tell Batman how this miss happened. Kid Flash slapped the Atlantean on the back. Cheer up. At least we can say we took down a major villain. Only Miss Martian noticed Naruto vanishing into the night. Naruto heard in his mind, thank you. Not hearing a reply, Miss Martian shut off her mental link with Naruto and peered into the night with a frown. Was he ever going to trust them? It took the rest only a minute or so to recognize that Naruto had disappeared. Kid Flash said, I swear to go he's like a ninja. Robin could merely nod. Naruto reminded him of Batman. Robin had still not gotten better at detecting his tutor when he disappeared. Naruto was just as good if not better at disappearing, but that could be due to his super speed. A simple recon mission. Observe and report. Each of the team members lined up in front of the caped crusader dressed in civilian clothing. He walked around and said, you'll each receive a written evaluation informing each of you of your many mistakes. Until then, good job. Apart from Robin and Naruto, the team seemed utterly surprised at Batman's sudden praise. No battle plan survives first contact with the enemy. How you adjust to the unforeseen is what determines success, and how you choose who leads determines character. He stopped and stared into Naruto's violet eyes, not missing the small and upward quirk of his mouth. Batman said, do you have something to add, Naruto? Naruto smiled. Karl von Clausewitz. He pointed out that no matter how carefully one plans, on the battlefield, even the smallest of details can cause setbacks. Regardless of how well thought out it is, armchair strategizing only works in the realm of theory. Unexpected troubles can jeopardize an operation, especially one as sensitive as an infiltration in Recon 1. You knew that the cult of Cobra was there, but you wanted to see how we could handle it. All of them looked surprised at Naruto's revelation. Robin's eyes widened slightly as he realized that Naruto was telling the truth. Batman merely smirked before he left the mission room. Megan asked, how long did you know? Naruto shrugged, I had my suspicions all along. Robin facepalmed as he muttered, I should have seen it. Naruto informed them, Batman had his reasons for doing what he did. He needed to know whether you were capable of missions such as these. Covert operations are unlike the normal skirmishes you have with the villains in your respective cities. You aren't in an area of familiarity, and the enemy has that advantage. You must be prepared for your plan to fail, and when it does you must be ready to improvise. We did a good job. We took down the largest supplier of venom and may have saved innocent lives in Gotham or any other city it used in. Calder looked at Naruto and saw the fierceness in his eyes. He said, I want you to be team leader. Wally jumped in. Calder, we voted you team leader. Calder shook his head. Naruto has shown to be the superior tactician. Naruto replied, strategy is important in winning any battle, but Calder, you have gained the trust of your teammate, and with it you have gained something that is even more important than any strategy I could come up with, loyalty. For that reason alone, I can say that you should be the leader. Calder nodded in respect to his fellow teammate. Naruto said, until next time. He walked off towards the Zeta Tube and boomed himself back to D.C. Washington. Hours later, Washington, D.C. Park. Naruto sat on a table moving the chess pieces on his own. He heard from behind him, Fisher and Spassky, Game 4. I heard you were quite the strategist. Naruto replied emotionless, considering the fact that you didn't even try to mask your presence away from me says that you aren't. A feminine voice melodiously chuckled as she took seat in front of him. I came here just to talk. Naruto's violet eyes looked at the slender, dark-skinned woman with dark blue eyes and long black hair. Naruto said, "You have my full attention. We've been watching you for quite some time now, Uzumaki Naruto. You have caught our interest," she said. "We wish for you to work for us." "And who are you?" The woman smiled slightly. "People who can grant you your freedom." Naruto narrowed his eyes. "I am not in prison or a slave of any kind. My freedom already exists." She passed him an envelope. "The Justice League has been monitoring your activities for a long time. They have already created enough contingency plans to subdue you should you go rogue. I have known of this for a long time. Batman has made it no secret that he doesn't trust me. You still haven't given me any initiative." "Open the envelope." Naruto did as he was asked and saw an audio player. He played the tape. "Diana, have you found Cage's weakness?" He heard Wonder Woman's reply, "It's me." "Then it's decided. You will remain close to Cage, earn his trust." Batman's voice could be heard. Naruto's grip on the table increased until small cracks formed beneath the chessboard. She smiled. "So do we have a deal?" Her coy voice seemed to be almost mocking him. Elsewhere, Sportsmaster said, "I only managed to procure a single ampule of cobra venom." He stood in front of 5 screens with light figures. The screen allocated to L4 was switched off. The French voice of L6 said, "Perhaps the drug can be reverse engineered." L1 spoke, "What of our young heroes? First, Cadmus, then Mr. Twister. Now, Santa Prisca. Once is happenstance. Twice is coincidence, but 3 times is enemy action." He spoke with voice filled with pure power. Enemies of the light must not stand. Naruto stared intently at the dark-skinned woman. "How do I know that you're not lying? Considering the fact that you managed to bug the Justice League's headquarters means you have a lot of power and resources. Surely someone of your stature has the resources to fake the tape." Queen Bee chuckled with mirth. "Oh come now, Mr. Uzumaki. I am sure you are intelligent enough to know that such a course of action is counterintuitive." She was right, but Naruto was still apprehensive to trust her. She saw his apprehension and decided to allay it. Perhaps some time to think would help. She smiled as she stood up. "I'll be sure to contact you, my liege." She bowed royally before she stalked off into the night. He gripped the stone table harder as it strained to remain standing. She was mocking him, reminding him of what he was. The fall of Uzumaki left him with nothing except an empty title, a title that meant nothing anymore. He was after all a king of nothing. Kyoto, Japan. C-1, in position and ready. C-2, in position and ready. Naruto surveyed from a hill the location that he was meant to be targeting. It was a relatively large Japanese-styled mansion. Batman had said that intel had shown that the owner had used his connections to steal a Quake Pulsar. Batman wanted it returned to STAR Labs as soon as possible. The branch in Japan had authorized Naruto to take it to American soil in hopes that it wouldn't be stolen again. He had advised the Caped Crusader that this mission should be a solo one. It was after all too sensitive to send in a group of rookies into foreign soil to retrieve a stolen weapon from a man that had a large amount of sway in East Asia. Batman had seemed to agree after some research into the man. Naruto was not even allowed to wear anything remotely similar to his normal attire. If he was spotted, the US would more than likely extradite him to the Japanese, and since he had no records, it would be rather easy for him to be silenced, if he were a normal human. So here he was dressed in a track suit with a balaclava. He had spent the better part of 2 days tracking the whereabouts of the Quake Pulsar. His clones had already flanked the building. They had placed seals across the building. He had created them specifically for this mission. The seals would release a powerful knockout gas that would flood the mansion. It would give Naruto a window of 10 minutes to get in, take the pulsar and leave. All without leaving a trace. "All right. Flood it." C1 and C2 replied, "Roger that." The guards, unaware as the colorless knockout gas flooded every inch of the mansion and surrounding area. Naruto said, "You know the drill." The 2 clones nodded and dispelled. His head throbbed as an influx of information entered his mind. Naruto jumped from the hill, his body rocketing towards the front of the mission. It took Naruto 8 minutes to find the safe that held the Quake Pulsar. He unsealed a scroll and began the process to seal the pulsar. The owner was on his desk, unconscious and drooling over his paperwork. Naruto packed it up and sped out of the house. Bang! Naruto merely raised his hand and the bullet stopped right in front of him. Judging by its size and the speed that it had been traveling, Naruto assumed it had come from a sniper rifle and a very powerful one. He closed his eyes and pulsed out his chakra using it as a form of echolocation. He sensed 9 people in the forest directly in front of him. He shouted, "Come out, you cannot hide from me." A demented laugh echoed as a group of 8 people walked out of the forest. The last one was perched on a tree branch. Naruto stared at them. He knew a large portion of the group. They were all villains of major heroes like Batman and the Flash. He listed their nicknames in his head: Killer Frost, Harley Quinn, Captain Boomerang, Killer Croc. The sniper perched on the treetop was most likely Deadshot. He looked at the remaining 4 people that stood in front of him. He had not been able to recognize them. Harley Quinn swung a baseball on her back and said, "Give us the Quake Pulsar and we may let you live." Her tone sounded like that of a jovial child, but Naruto didn't miss the hidden deadliness undertone. No uniform. No swords. Minimal use of powers. Batman's orders floated to the forefront of his mind. Naruto's eyes narrowed and he remembered that each of the villains was meant to be locked up tight in Belle Reve, one of the only facilities capable of holding these monsters. "Batman to Cage, do you have the package?" Batman's voice echoed through his comms. Naruto muttered, "Yes, I do, but I have a little situation. Do you have any idea why Harley Quinn, Killer Frost and a group of villains are here in Japan?" "Cage. Disengage now." "They're the static." Naruto removed the comm and crushed it with his boot. Harley Quinn shouted, Now, we can't have you calling in reinforcements." Naruto growled, "Don't need any." But he guessed it was time to withdraw. He drew a flashbang and threw it on the ground. The team turned around for a few seconds before they turned their gaze back to Naruto's previous position only to find that he had gone. "Waller, he's gone," and he took the package. A woman wearing what appeared to be modernized samurai armor and a white porcelain half mask that covered the top half of her face approached the site of Naruto's disappearance. She saw a paper tag on the ground. It was inscribed with a special writing, centering around the kanji for explode. She muttered, "By Kami." She turned to her teammates and shouted, "Everyone run." They didn't have time as the paper tag began to ignite. Killer Frost ran to her teammate and used her cryokinetic abilities to make a dense ice dome around the explosive tag. The explosion shattered the ice as if it were glass. Killer Frost muttered something about how her ice should have stopped the explosion from ever occurring. All of the Suicide Squad heard, "This is Waller. Prepare for immediate extraction and debriefing." Amanda Waller had realized that her team's secret existence was probably severely compromised when the Quake Pulsar turned up in STAR Labs in Gotham. Would Batman become more aggressive in his tactics to shut down the Suicide Squad? Why was the Caped Crusader using a covert operative to retrieve a very dangerous weapon? Amanda Waller wanted answers and she would get them, by force if necessary. Next day morning, Washington, D.C. Wonder Woman eyed her protégé suspiciously. For the past few days he would rarely speak to her. When he did, he sounded tired and incredibly cold. What happened to him whilst she had gone to Metropolis? She needed to know. She said, "Naruto. I made us breakfast." Naruto, who had been working intently on a computer program, merely gazed up from his laptop screen. He replied in a tone that seemed incredibly cautious, "I don't want any, but I thank you for making some." To Wonder Woman, his words never reached his eyes. He didn't seem at all grateful. She narrowed her eyes, but before she could speak, her Justice League communicator began to vibrate, indicating that she was needed. She gave him a pointed look telling him that they would talk about this later. Naruto let out a soft growl. He didn't want anything to do with the Themysciran. He heard a robotic voice from his laptop. "I hate to disturb you at this hour, but I am sorry to report that I have absolutely nothing on the woman you told me. Her name is Queen Bee, but that is just about it. Her origins are unknown, and whoever this group is, they seem to be smart enough not to leave a single trace behind. If I didn't know you, I would say that you were lying." Naruto merely muttered, "Thank you." The voice droned, "Anytime, mate." Whilst it was true that Naruto didn't have any contacts that would be able to match the caliber of this mysterious organization, he did know a few people on the dark web that he had helped on more than one occasion. He didn't exactly trust them with his life or anything, but they were the closest he could get to an ally at the moment. He walked towards his bedroom. He needed some time to think. He needed a plan, but his mind was so addled about Wonder Woman's apparent betrayal that he simply couldn't think straight. His eyes narrowed at the Othello board. He knew for one that he couldn't trust anyone anymore. Even the mysterious woman he had met mostly likely had a secret agenda. The question that remained was, which one was the lesser of two evils? Was it the Justice League or was it this mysterious organization? Or perhaps it was time that he walked his own path. He had much to ponder about and he was destitute of both time and information. Happy Harbor, Mount Justice, Zeta Chamber, August 3rd. 13 recognized B05, Cage. Recognized B04, Superboy. The two appeared out of the neighboring Zeta beam chambers. They briefly looked at each other before Superboy turned away huffing. Apparently, the clone was irritated by something, not that he was in the mood to socialize himself. Megan asked, "How was Metropolis, Superboy?" The clone didn't even reply but instead continued to walk through a holographic hockey table that Kid Flash and Calder had been playing on. Naruto raised an eyebrow. It appeared that Superman wanted nothing to do with the clone. That was after all quite understandable. Naruto wouldn't know what to do if someone had made a clone of him. He probably wouldn't go near the abomination. Ahem. A small cough was heard from one of the tunnels adjacent to the Zeta BAM chambers. Ready for training, everyone. The team turned to see Black Canary and the Martian Manhunter enter the room. Megan shouted happily, "Uncle John." She ran up and hugged him. The elder Martian replied, "Emgen, I was in the area so I came to see how you were adjusting to life on Earth." "A few bumps on the way but I am learning," Emgen said. "Glad to hear that." Naruto and Black Canary both observed as Superboy frowned and began to walk out of the room. "Stick around. You might learn a thing or two," the superheroine told him. "Class is now in session." She walked into the center of the circular projection pad and it lit up. She turned to the group, "I consider it an honor to be your teacher. I'll throw a lot at you. Everything that I have learned from my mentors." She winced slightly as she took off her jacket. "And from my own bruises." Both Superboy and Naruto watched with disinterest, one because he believed that the metahuman had nothing to teach him and the other because he believed that the heroine was much too weak to beat him. "Are you okay?" Megan asked. Black Canary dismissed her concerns. "Just the job." She spoke as though to tell the sidekicks that their occupation was filled with potential hazards, not that they needed to be told. "Now combat is an art and in order for you to win, you must dictate the flow of the battle on your own terms. I will need a sparring partner." "Ooh, me," Wally said excitedly. He did a flirtatious pose that seemed to amuse instead of disgust Black Canary. Probably because she was dating the Green Arrow. "After this, I'll show you my moves." Naruto almost shook his head in pure exasperation. He could see the minute details of Black Canary's body, her muscles tightening, her pulse quickening and her facial features beginning to slack as she entered a mode that allowed her to react passively to Kid Flash. It was obvious that her senses weren't quick enough to handle Kid Flash's speed, but she was trained to react the second he tried to attack her. Of course, this method had plenty of weaknesses, but it was her best bet and it wouldn't have worked against those with the full set of superhuman physiological traits. They would outmatch Black Canary with ease. Kid Flash was unprepared but Naruto saw her movements in slow motion. She began a frontal assault that led to Kid Flash stepping back. She saw the opportunity and swept his leg. The young speedster fell on his back. How pathetic, Naruto thought. He closed his eyes and sighed. He had no idea why he was still here. Superboy rant snapped him out of his stupor. "Oh please, with my powers there is no way I would lose." Naruto smiled. He had a chance now. "For once I agree with the clone. You are a low-level metahuman, Canary." Both Superboy and Black Canary snapped their heads to the armored teenager. Black Canary seemed unfazed. "Perhaps a demonstration then, Cage." Naruto stepped onto the ring. He said monotonously, "Such hubris coming from you, Black Canary. Allow me to bring you back down to earth." She never spoke but instead chose to charge him. Naruto merely dodged each of her attacks. Black Canary thought she was pushing him back. She aimed a kick to his knee. Naruto simply shifted his body forward and pushed her. She nearly stumbled to the ground. "You cannot beat me, Canary. Even if you were to use your pathetic bird cry." She growled and then she screamed but it never reached her vocal cords. Naruto moved at a blurring speed before delivering a powerful kick to her diaphragm. Canary was flung from her spot to the wall. Naruto's gravity powers stopped her from hitting the wall. A stunned silence filled the room and none of them even noticed the appearance of Batman on the screen. Naruto turned and said, Perhaps you should assign a stronger teacher next time, Batman. He walked out of the room. The silence that permeated across the room was interrupted by Batman. I have a mission for you. Batman didn't need Naruto for this mission, he would talk to the kid later. With Naruto atop the ocean that once held Uzushiogakure, Naruto looked at the rampant tides and then back to the sky, as if he would get an answer to his unspoken question. He felt so hopeless, he didn't want to be here. He would rather he died with his mother than living in a world like this. His life in Uzushiogakure was a simple and fulfilling one. His life here was anything but that. It was complicated, everyone was out to get each other. A war that was fought in the shadows, one where the heroes were not heroes but a group of self-righteous warriors who fought for their definition of what was justice. He had no idea how long he had been here. Hours must have passed as he sat levitating over the ocean. His mind lost in memories of his past. Metropolis Diana had just arrived to see Clark walk out of the diner. Her eyes went to Bruce Wayne, who remained seated with a stoic expression on his face. She walked up to Bruce and said, "What are you doing here?" Bruce narrowed his eyes at Diana. Her facial expression indicated that she was under a lot of stress. Superboy has become increasingly volatile, and it is because Clark doesn't wish to take responsibility. His history with his clones makes him believe that Connor will turn out to be just the same. Bruce continued, "Diana, I need to know, is Naruto going to turn on us?" Diana seemed apprehensive. "Why would you believe that?" Bruce narrowed his eyes at her apprehension. Diana began to feel uncomfortable as Bruce peered right through her. "What do you know?" he asked. "No," demanded from the Themysciran. "Nothing definitive or anything that could help you with your investigation. All I know is that he began to harbor a lot ill will towards me recently." Bruce looked into the distance, his mind trying to connect the seemingly disconnected points. Perhaps he believes that we are just using him, or perhaps he knows something that would cause such animosity to arise. It's too real to be random. "But why me?" Diana asked. Bruce looked into her blue eyes and replied, "He knows." He stood up abruptly and walked out of the room, leaving without his pie. Diana seemed all the more confused about what was going on. Shrugging, she took Bruce's pie and began to dig in, knowing that he wouldn't come back for it. She understood that Bruce Wayne now saw Naruto as a very dangerous enemy. God save them if Naruto were to access his demonic form. She would have to return to the Mistira in due time. Only Hephaestus would be capable of forging a weapon that could bring down an Uzumaki. Back with the team, they had failed to complete their objective. Professor Evo's Amazo had been stolen from right under their noses by a horde of robotic monkeys. It was an embarrassing defeat. Once again they had realized that they were weak. It seemed so surreal that when Batman and the other Leaguers addressed them that they weren't ready to join the League, that they would be so right. Right now, they made a bad strategical error, as it was only a matter of time before Amazo would awaken and perhaps amass more power. This was bad. If Amazo became any more powerful, they would stand no chance against the android. It would be helpful if Naruto was here. Superboy, in blinded rage, decided to chase after the monkeys and Amazo, leaving behind his earpiece and a team that had no idea what to do next. Megan said, "This Professor Evo, if he is alive, seems to be 2 steps ahead of us." She asked apprehensively, "Maybe we should contact Red Tornado?" Aqualad disagreed. "Tornado always tells us to handle things ourselves. And the mission can still succeed if we recover the parts before they're reassembled." Kid Flash sarcastically, "Well, that's a great plan, except for the part about us not knowing where to look." Robin smirked as he contemplated the various ways to track the monkeys down. He explained, "Maybe we do. We'd have heard by now if the decoy trucks had been attacked. So how did these monkeys know exactly which trucks to target?" Robin began to examine the robotic monkeys and found something. The parts have GPS. The monkeys can track the signal, which means I can track them with the one I captured. It looks both sets of parts are converging on Gotham City." Aqualad said, "That far south, Emgen and I will not get there anytime soon." Robin said, "I am sending Kid ahead. I will join him later." He tapped his computer gauntlet and entered a code. He prayed that it worked. "Static, Robin. What do you want?" "Cage, thank God. We were hijacked and some android monkeys took Amazo's body parts. I fear that they will assemble Amazo before we get there." Robin heard a deep sigh before Naruto spoke. "Fine, send me the coordinates." Naruto sounded tired and Robin hated it. He hated how much they had to rely on Naruto as a crutch every time they felt something remotely dangerous, but if the stories of Amazo were true, then he suspected that Naruto would be the only one who could stop him. He just hoped Amazo hadn't copied all the powers of the Justice League yet, or else this was going to turn into a massacre. Gotham Academy. The entire team lay defeated on the cracked wooden floor of the basketball hall. At first they seemed to be winning. They even managed to attack Evo to depower Amazo, but then it changed and some advanced protocol allowed it to access the full power of those that he had copied. With MM's psionic abilities and Atom's ability to manipulate energy and molecular transmutation, it was a losing battle. Evo cackled, "Each of you is pathetic copies of the originals. You could barely handle a weak Amazo, let alone one that has access to the full power set of those it has copied. I guess this is goodbye, children." Robin ground his teeth as he tried to get up, but he felt so tired, his mind barely hanging on to consciousness. Where was he? Did he leave them? The last thing he saw was Amazo charging up an atomic blast and a blue energy wave rushing towards the android. "I guess I am late to the party." Heavy footsteps echoed as Naruto entered the hall. Evo felt the amount of power permeating from the armored behemoth. Naruto twirled his blades and said, "I heard that you copied the Justice League's abilities. Let's see how much you compare." With insane speed, Naruto rushed towards Amazo, who had begun to fire a barrage of atomic blasts, but Naruto's blades deflected each of them. Amazo was forced to backpedal as Naruto almost cut off its head. Access Martian Manhunter. His sword passed through the android, but Naruto merely smiled as the blade began to vibrate and a screeching electricity emerged from the blade. Amazo sent Naruto flying by accessing its telekinesis, but at the cost of the electricity frying some of its internals. Access Superman. A scorching beam erupted for each of its eyes, but Naruto replied with his own optic blast. A large explosion rung through the hall as both Naruto and Amazo met in the center. No holding back, Naruto thought. He dodged a punch from the android and released a gravity-enhanced uppercut that sent it flying straight into the night sky. Naruto rocketed upwards and fired an optic blast that sent the android further into the sky. The android tried to halt Naruto's ascension by releasing a powerful gust of air from its mouth, but Naruto's acceleration was powerful enough to rip through the wind. Amazo reacted in time to dodge Naruto's sword but found itself being launched straight to the ground by a kick. Naruto once again released an even more powerful optic beam, causing Amazo to be forced to access Martian Manhunter. Naruto noted that there was a time lag before the android could activate its abilities. It was around 5 seconds. He grinned as he began to formulate a plan to destroy the android. He felt himself being jerked towards Amazo through some sort of telekinesis. Naruto let himself get dragged as he slowly enclosed gravity around himself and the android. The closer he got, the stronger the gravity became, and Amazo felt its circuitry begin to snap under the unearthly amount of gravity. Down below, the earth began to crack and the team who had just awakened found themselves being face-faulted to the ground. Naruto grinned. Under such conditions only he could function. Amazo tried to phase but found Naruto throwing his Totsuka blade straight through it. 1,000,000 amps were discharged from the sword and Amazo was shocked back into rematerializing. Severe damage detected. Access Super Arc. A dull thud echoed as Naruto's Totsuka blade pierced Amazo from behind. Naruto said, "Goodbye." A black fire ripped through the air and burnt the Amazo until all that remained were flickers of metallic dust. Meanwhile, a few miles away, the Justice League were approaching Gotham Academy. Batman asked, "Status report." "Superman, what do you see?" Superman replied, "Cage has destroyed the Amazo." Flash asked worriedly, "What about the others?" Superman's eyes glowed white as he scanned the area using his X-ray vision. "They are currently in the basketball hall. They seem to be fine." That was all Flash needed to hear as he rushed towards the hall. Wonder Woman said, "I am going on ahead. I need to speak to Cage." Batman said, "No, Diana, wait." But she wouldn't listen as she flew towards where Naruto was levitating. Superman, Supergirl, Zatara, Captain Marvel and Captain Atom. "I want you all stand by in case Cage does something." Supergirl questioned, "Why would he do something?" Batman seemed apprehensive. "I made a mistake." All the Justice Leaguers looked at the caped Crusader who was cruising on his jet in slight shock. Batman was not one to admit his mistakes. "Careful all of you. If he could defeat Amazo by himself, there is no telling what he is capable of." With Naruto heard Batman's orders and simply smiled. It appeared that Batman's deductive skills hadn't waned in the slightest. Naruto. He heard Diana shout and he merely turned to his mentor, his visor flashing red and ethereal black flames dancing around his armor. What is it, the Maeskrin? Diana froze when she heard him call him that. She steeled herself and replied, "Tell me what I have done to receive such hatred." It sounded like a plea. Naruto merely chuckled, "Don't pretend to like me, the Maeskrin. I know of the accord between you and Batman." Diana looked puzzled, but then she remembered the first day that she learnt that Naruto was an Uzumaki. Batman had approached her and asked if she knew of any of the boy's weaknesses, and she replied that it was her. Naruto growled, "So you finally remember. It was a ploy, wasn't it, Amazonian? I thought that your people were one of honor, but I guess I was wrong." Diana said firmly, "I acknowledge my mistake, Naruto, but I ask that we move past it. You were like me, lost in a world that you had only hatred for, and I know what that path leads down, but after I got to know you, I choose to ignore Batman's orders." Naruto replied, "Then I can only assume you know what will happen now." Diana understood that this meant he was going to leave. "And you understand that I cannot let you leave." Naruto grinned, "Is that so?" A blue jet emerged from his visor and zeroed in on Wonder Woman. She raised her bracelets as they deflected the energy beam harmlessly into the air. Wonder Woman dashed towards him and they two began to fight in the air. Naruto flipped backwards to avoid Wonder Woman's sword strike and released a gravitational wave that knocked her back several hundred meters. Naruto unsheathed his swords as he blocked two incoming beams of heat visions. Diana, who had already recovered, was now standing with Captain Marvel, Superman, Supergirl, Captain Atom and Zatara. Superman said, his eyes glowing an ethereal red, "Give up, Cage. You cannot win." Cage Bunshin no Jutsu. 100 clones erupted from the smoke. "Scatter." They all said. Supergirl and Superman tried to scan each of them but found that they all looked the same internally. Instead, they chose to pursue them. Lasers erupted from their eyes and attacked clones that simply turned back into smoke. Diana closed her eyes and prayed for Apollo to show her the direction, and he did. She followed in pursuit of 10 clones that were flying at Mach 300. Naruto smirked as he gave the clones a discreet signal. They slowed down and allowed Diana to halt them. Diana replied, "Stop this instant, Naruto." The clones said simultaneously, "Okay." As Diana floated forwards to try and speak, the clones all made a single hand sign and shouted, "Katsu." A colossal explosion struck Wonder Woman, who was stunned by the force of it. She could not react in time as Naruto tagged her before punching her straight down into the city of Brussels. Naruto made another hand sign. Another explosion resounded just above the city. He dive-bombed towards where Wonder Woman landed. As she was getting up, Naruto smashed straight into her back, causing her to groan. Another kick to the midsection and she was sent flying into a skyscraper. Wonder Woman raised her bracelets to avoid a jet of blue energy but was sent crashing down by a wave of gravity. She could hardly react in time as Naruto raised his palms and released 1,000 amps through them. She screamed. Naruto merely raised his palm to stop Superman's punch, and with a gesture, the Man of Steel was flung through several buildings. Wonder Woman kicked Naruto's knee, and as he body shifted, she quickly took him down. Naruto just laughed as she continued to punch against his gravity barrier. "As much as I enjoy this fight, I have an appointment to get going too." He raised his hands in the same gesture as before and Wonder Woman saw her stomach glowing. She tried to rip it off. "Don't bother, the seal is embedded in your dermis. It's a torture seal I created." Gravity pushed her straight into the way of an incoming Superman. The two were flung into a building. Naruto flew into the air and saw Superman and Wonder Woman getting up. He thought, "I really don't like using this seal, but I am running out of time." He activated it and Wonder Woman fell to the ground, thrashing in pain until she fell unconscious. Naruto shouted, "I would take her to the Mischira, only they know how to stop the seal." Superman growled, "I will kill you." Naruto grinned demonically, "So the Boy Scout does have a dark side, that's good to know, but wouldn't you rather your girlfriend survived? She may be unconscious, but the pain is still unbearable." Superman fired a jet of his heat vision at Naruto, but Naruto just deflected it. "You have two choices, follow me and she may die, or leave me be and get your girlfriend to the Mischira." Of course, this was a bluff and Naruto knew it. He had altered the original seal so that it would only knock out the person and not kill them. "I will find you." Naruto simply laughed, "Don't bother, I will find you Kent." Superman's eyes widened, but before he could ask how, Naruto was already flying over Paris. Hours later. Crash. Batman avoided a punch that dented the wall of the watchtower. "You're telling me that all of this was your fault?" Diana, who had since recovered, stopped Superman's second punch. "It was our fault. We kept pushing Naruto in the wrong direction, and he snapped." Batman grimaced. "It's going to be League priority to find him, but from what Wonder Woman has told me, it will be almost impossible." Hal Jordan said with a hint of anger, "I am not helping you find him. He had the right to leave." Batman replied, "He was a danger. For someone who claims not to be judge and jury, you sure do like taking the law in your own hands," Hal said angrily. He turned to the rest of the people on the table. "I vote we give him time to settle down. If he does something illegal, then we can act, but until then leave Uzumaki Naruto alone." A show of hands for those who agree. A large majority raised their hands, including Wonder Woman, shocking those who hadn't raised their hands. Batman merely turned around and said, "You're all making a big mistake. Naruto is more dangerous than you think." He left the watchtower without saying another word. An uneasy silence fell upon the rest of the Leaguers. "Penthouse Gotham Penthouse, I take it you are comfortable with your current living arrangements?" A voice echoed from the TV screen. Naruto sat comfortably on the expensive sofa. "It is more than adequate, but I do hope for some action." "Already. I see that you got rid of your helmet." Naruto replied, "Just need to make sure it isn't bugged. Anyway, have you found what I was looking for?" "I sent the file to your computer. I wonder what you wanted with the data of young metahumans." Naruto smiled. "The young are the easiest to sway. And if they don't," he replied, "no matter, they will see the light." The voice chuckled, "Welcome to the Council of the Light, Uzumaki Naruto." The screen switched off and Naruto walked towards the computer. He pulled up the file and began reading. A smile played on his lips. The game had begun and neither the Justice League or the Light were ready for his endgame. Naruto watched the sun rise above Gotham and smiled. He muttered, "The Red Dawn is coming, and with it, the Uzumaki clan will rise again." All there was for miles was death. Uzumaki's dead, Amazonians dead. All for nothing, all for their pathetic pride. The stench of burnt flesh permeated the air and hung over the one living person like a cloak. The Mon's silhouette flapped in the air, dark flames flickered across his body. He heard a booming, a laugh, and then the heavy footsteps of Amazonian soldiers coming towards him. "What do you have left to fight for?" The man stood there, patiently waiting with his sword drawn as he felt the speeding arrival of the world's mightiest warrior, Hippolyta. "Nothing," the man said. His purple eyes shifted into red eyes with concentric ripples and Tomio's. "Amazonian." The Mon's fire spread away from him and he dashed towards them. His mind bloody with rage as he butchered everything in his way to get to Hippolyta. The woman stood above him, watching as her comrades were killed, as the young Uzumaki was injured from her battles. An ethereal blue armor surrounded the man as he activated his Susanoo. Hippolyta flew into the air. Her eyes glowed a divine white as she screamed, "For Olympus! For Timesura!" The skies crackled with lightning, the wind blew with ferocity and the water around them raged in anger. The Greek gods had given Hippolyta their blessing. The young man could barely avoid Hippolyta's attack, her sword cutting his armor in half, leaving him exposed. She threw her lasso around him, containing him. "You have done enough damage, Uzumaki." She threw straight into a temple and returned him back to her feet. He struggled fruitlessly against the divine hold of her lasso. "This is the end, this war, 1,000 years of bloodshed because of your clan." The man chuckled, "It was you Amazonians who killed my mother, who butchered the elders of our clan. No, if you kill me here, it will only cause the war to escalate." Hippolyta looked down at the young man with harsh eyes, her sword slashed down and cut across his neck, cutting his carotid. His last words still haunted her to this day, "Amenemehashira." His body glowed an ethereal yellow, then blue. His scream of pain could be heard throughout the battlefield despite the blood in his mouth. Then he exploded. A pillar of energy shot straight to the heavens and then expanded, scorching the earth and disintegrating everyone. Hippolyta's world turned white as she awoke to a decimated island. That was the day that the Mischira fell, the day that the war ended. Naruto and Hippolyta awoke with a gasp, despite being in different parts of the world. Hippolyta frowned in sadness. She had taken an afternoon nap. As she looked outside her window at the now flourishing island, it seemed so long ago. That war had brought the worst out of her. She remembered her daughter being brought by Superman. That seal made her shiver and she had the urge to hunt the Uzumaki down, but she realized that it had been modified to only knock her out. Diana had talked about Uzumaki Naruto before. It reminded her far too much of the young man in her dream. He was a kind young man, who lost his family in the war. She killed his parents and sent them to Uzushiogakure in a brash manner. A vendetta was born and he became the leader of the clan whilst she became the leader of the Amazons. He killed everything in his way. With each kill, he became stronger as he sacrificed everything to his demonic alter ego, in an effort to kill her. Uzumaki Naruto reminded her of that young man, the very embodiment of obsession and rage. He lost his clan and she could only guess what was going on in his mind, but she knew that the Amazonians would be out for blood. They took his attack on their princess as a direct provocation of war. Naruto awoke to a dream that felt so surreal. It reminded him of the other dreams that he had experienced over the past months. It was like he was that man. He felt what that man felt, his pain, his sorrow and his overwhelming anger to the Amazonians. He sighed as he wiped the sweat of his forehead. All of these memories that didn't belong to him were causing some serious damage to his mind. He was feeling fractured, like he was one personality in an ocean of others and he had no idea how to deal with it. Right now, for example, he felt the incredible urge to fly over the Mistira and crush it. He breathed in slowly as he calmed his mind. He felt the urge subside and hoped that it would never return. Batcave Batman rubbed his eyes tiredly. He sighed as he looked at the massive computer screen. Another negative, his search to finding Naruto seemed to come to an unexpected halt. The world's greatest detective had only managed to confirm a few certain suspicions, the first being that Naruto was helped by an outside source. Naruto was new to this world. He didn't venture far enough or spend enough times understanding how to remain inconspicuous in the modern world. His second suspicion was confirmed when he and Superman scanned the entirety of the Watchtower. It was clear that either a mole existed in the Justice League or that they were able to plant some sort of device in the League that no one was aware of. Either circumstances scared him. This organization or group were powerful enough to infiltrate the Justice League and had enough resources to hide a powerful meta-human. "Should I go out patrolling without you?" Robin asked as he walked out of an elevator. "There is no need to go out patrolling," Batman said gruffly. Besides, crime seemed to have slowed down in Gotham. His eyes narrowed, and he quickly began to research something on the computer. Robin watched his ward look at GCPD records, particularly a report that involved the arrest of Poison Ivy. "What are you looking for?" "Nothing." Batman stood up abruptly, his eyes still affixed to the screen before he marched off towards the Batmobile. "Where are we going?" Robin asked. "I am going alone," he announced, entering the vehicle. Robin sighed as he watched the sleek black car rise on a platform and speed out of the house. His eyes flickered to the screen. A cheeky idea formed in his mind. Batman must have been in a rush if he didn't close what he was working on. Arkham Asylum. The asylum was an isolated facility that existed solely to hold and rehabilitate the most dangerous criminals of Gotham City. Batman, or rather Bruce Wayne, funded a lot of the asylum. It allowed for him to keep track of the criminals' whereabouts and make plans if they ever got out, which was a very common occurrence. Batman sneaked throughout the facility. The dark corridors shrouded his movements as he reached his target. Poison Ivy sat in a white padded room wearing a straitjacket and an inhibition collar. "Oh, it's you, Bats," she grinned. Batman's eyes narrowed at her. He growled, "How were you captured?" "Why?" Ivy taunted. Batman grabbed her from the hems of her jacket. "I know that there is no one in Gotham that is capable of withstanding your poison." Ivy laughed, as expected from the world's greatest detective. A smirk played on her lips, "Though you were a few days later than expected." Batman threw Poison Ivy to the ground. Surprise marred his face when her body disappeared in a plume of white smoke. He muttered, "Bunshin." So, his suspicion was correct. Uzumaki Naruto was here, in Gotham of all places, and he had Poison Ivy with him. The alarm flared to life. Batman grunted as he heard the guards run towards the cell. He needed to ensure that there were no more clones in place of the prisoners, but the presence of the guards forced him to retreat. A guard shouted, "Close the gates, Ivy has escaped." He looked around and found a small note on the floor, never noticing a silent shadow moving behind him and into the corridor. There would be chaos in the asylum that night, but it would allow Batman to see how many clones there were in the asylum. League of Shadows headquarter Naruto rubbed his head in pain as memories of his clone appeared in his head. Ross Al Ghul looked at the team with slight worry. Uzumaki, are you okay? I am fine. He groused. Ross sighed. Luther has warned you off the danger of using your clones, Uzumaki. I can handle one set of memories and it was necessary for the plan. Naruto replied. Truthfully, using clones for a long period of time wasn't a particularly good idea despite his incredible regenerative ability because of the massive feedback he received from them, and since regenerative abilities didn't come hand in hand with the ability to fix a fractured mind, Naruto knew that it was risk that he should take. I take it that Batman has figured out that Ivy is in our possession, Ross said. Naruto smirked. Of course, Batman's the only one in the Justice League that poses a problem to our plan. Ross nodded. Then I shall tell Queen Bee and Luther to proceed as you have instructed. He gave Naruto a pointed look. For your sake, I hope that it goes well. He walked off to the comforts of his own chamber. Naruto grunted. Stupid old man. They had forced him to play mastermind. Savage had said that the inner circle never did anything that would bring suspicion among them. Since he was affiliated with nobody, he was the logical choice in this plan of action. They wanted him to play the role of the diversion whilst they stole something. Naruto stood up and flew out of the window at Mach 20. I guess it was time to show my face. He never noticed the red arrow that pierced the wall next to the window he just flew from. He would only be notified of the breach several hours later. Gotham Cape Carmen Poison Ivy was sitting in her newly bought apartment after she had been released by Naruto and his unknown associates. She had been told not to contact her friends or create any havoc until they contacted her. Ivy. A burst of air rushed into the apartment as Naruto sped in. She grunted. Can you not just knock? Naruto shrugged. I could, but I chose not to. Ivy simply sighed at his pitiful excuse. I suppose it is time for us to act, she said, getting up and stretching her body. So, what am I to do? Naruto grinned. You are going to be the diversion for the bat. Ivy groused. Griat. I can raise forests, but instead you want me to play the pet for the bat. He smirked at her. Ivy would have flipped him off, but she knew the bastard didn't care for her feelings. Batman's first logical assumption would be that I broke you out, so if you start causing mayhem you'll be on his priority list for an interrogation. Ivy narrowed her eyes. She didn't like being thrown under a bus, but Naruto soothed her worries. Don't you worry, I will have a clone ready for an extraction. And what will you be doing? Ivy asked, somewhat curious what all this planning was for. Naruto smiled. I am afraid that's above your pay grade. Mimicking a government official. Ivy rubbed her head, wondering what she did to deserve all of this headache. Gear up, I have a present that will help you. Ivy raised a smooth green eyebrow, somewhat interested as to what this present would be. Naruto threw a box towards her. She opened it and found a green bean in it. What's this? It's filled with my yang energy. It will enhance your abilities. Naruto replied. Poison Ivy looked at the object with incredible skepticism. Why are you doing this? You can easily conjure up a clone to act as a diversion, she asked. Naruto replied, his form vibrating. Think of it as a test. With that, his body glowed a bright glow before it simply rippled out of existence. Ivy sighed. Great, another Riddler. She casually strutted out of her living room, making preparations to cover Gotham in a forest. She eyed the bean in her hands. She knew how much Naruto's life force affected Naruto. Perhaps I've found him. With that, she too disappeared from her apartment. Hours later Naruto was angry. He had heard that Dr. Roquette had been stolen from right underneath the League's noses. The plan doesn't change, Naruto said to his other counterparts. Savage groused, and what if Dr. Roquette manages to find a way to break the encryption? The boy grinned ferally. Shall be the distraction we need then. I have already instructed Ivy to attack Gotham. The Justice League will be helpless against her new control of nature, and the young ones will be busy protecting the dear doctor. It should provide the window necessary to get what we want. Queen Bee replied, and what of the staff? That was only for my benefit, not yours. Naruto asked calmly. I shall get the staff on my own. I believe it Ross who is at fault if this mission goes awry. Ross growled but remained silent. Deal with the doctor. Savage instructed the master assassin, before the feed was shut off. Naruto's eye flashed red with anger. His plan had been disrupted because that idiotic assassin couldn't keep a doctor locked up. He bared his fangs and muttered, "Looks like I'll have to send a clone after the doctor, just in case." Night fell and with it an uneasy silence befell the groups. The young heroes were holed up inside school guarding Dr. Roquette. Artemis, the newest addition of the group, was set to stand guard the perimeter alongside Miss Martian, whose telepathy was constantly scanning the area. The heroes were all trigger itchy, not knowing where or when the assassins would descend upon them. Miss Martian felt something. She said, "I sense someone." Aqualad ordered, "Everyone report." "I see nothing on my end," Artemis and Miss Martian replied. Aqualad waited for a response from Kid Flash. All he heard was static. Kid Flash, though he was snapped into focus when a blade whirled forth from the shadows, aimed at the doctor with lethal aim. He jumped, blocking the blade with his dense flesh. The assassin stepped out. "That looked like it hurt," she mockingly added. Aqualad grimaced, drawing one of his water blade and getting ready to battle. "Artemis, Miss Martian. The enemy is here," he said through the comm. She charged at him, easily moving under his inexperienced slashes and kicking him from under. Aqualad grabbed the water from his now unmaterialized sword and used it to throw her across the room. The assassin jumped onto the desk before she hit the wall, throwing one of her sai at Aqualad's now heaved-over body. Clang, an arrow deflected the blade away. The assassin grinned, "Now this is interesting." Artemis replied, 2 against 1. She fired several volleys of arrows at the assassin, all aimed to maim her target. The assassin laughed, moving with incredible athleticism and flexibility. She spun around, deflecting each of Artemis' arrow onto the doctor. "It's over." "What's over?" Kid Flash smirked. The arrows lay in his hands. He ran at her with the intention to knock her over. The assassin jumped back but was thrown by Miss Martian's telekinesis. She grimaced. This was not a fight that could be won. A canister shot through the glass window, and a dark smoke filled up the room. The assassin was unprepared to be grabbed by a blur. The figure stopped a second later in the woods. She pushed herself away from him. "Who are you?" Her vision still blurry from the high-speed movement. "Boss. I got her," the figure said. The assassin muttered, "Naruto." "Cheshire. Boss says hello," the clone replied. Her vision slowly returned back to normal. In that moment, Cheshire grabbed Naruto's clone and growled. "Why did you that?" "I would have escaped, I had reinforcements." Naruto growled, "Boss says that Ross is too idiotic to see how much value the doctor truly has. He wants her mind for himself. Besides, you wouldn't have been able to beat them anyway." His grin was far too sinister. "I am an assassin," she replied. "And I am a unicorn," he said sarcastically. "Now instead of killing Roquette, get back there and distract them long enough for Boss to finish his plan." The clone puffed out of his existence, leaving an angry Cheshire walking back to the school. Gotham Batman dodged another tendril from Poison Ivy. The woman moved at incredible speed, or was it that he had become slow? She grinned, "Do you like my new pollen?" Batman threw a grenade at a massive plant that was about to swallow him. The plant exploded, and Poison Ivy glowered, "My poor baby, you'll pay for that, Batman." She grabbed the box and ate the bean. Power rushed through her, the likes that she had never felt before. She felt attuned to nature, like she could feel every plant in the entire state calling out to her, and she was drawing energy from them. "Let's begin." Her eyes glowed a nefarious green. Batman would have been stabbed by a thorn that had erupted from the ground had it not been for the timely arrival of Wonder Woman. Diana cut the vine in half and blocked several other vines shooting towards her with her shield. She said, "How is she so powerful?" Ivy had never been so attuned to nature. She could feel it. It was almost like she was in the presence of Lady Artemis. Batman growled. She ate a bean. It enhanced her powers. Wonder Woman was about to charge Ivy when Batman said, "No, we need a plan of action. We don't know how strong she is." Though it was far too late, trees sprouted out from the ground, vines crawled and twisted around the skyscrapers, and in mere seconds, Gotham appeared to have been turned into Ivy's playground. She laughed wickedly. "It won't help. I have the power of the green now." Her body melded into one of the plants and she disappeared. Batman and Wonder Woman stood anxiously, wondering where Ivy had gone. She sprouted behind Wonder Woman. The Amazon blocked the blow with her shield but was launched straight into a building. Batman threw one of his fire grenades into the ground. Vines burned around him, forcing Ivy to retreat inside the plant life. He said, "Give up, Ivy. You cannot beat us, soon the Justice League will arrive. Ivy's laughter echoed throughout the entirety of Gotham. Then let's have some fun, bats. I've always wondered how many gadgets you have inside that belt of yours. Vines grew once more, sharp sticks of wood launching themselves towards the helpless detective. Batman grabbed his grapple and fired it in the air. The thrones missed him, and the spikes embedded themselves into the soil. Batman landed into the cockpit of his plane. The Batwing dove downwards, firing volleys of missiles that lit up the plant life. Ivy screamed as her plants burned. She could feel them crying out in pain. It hurt so much. Vines shot forwards, ripping the machine apart into a fiery explosion. Batman flipped out, gliding towards Wonder Woman, who was now cutting every vine in her way. He said, "We need to burn it." Arif N Rub Syvistnalp, Nrut Met Otni Hsa Zatanna's voice shouted as he descended down towards the central plaza to assist Batman alongside Captain Atom, Superman and Flash. Ivy screamed further. The magic burned her plants before they disintegrated into piles of ash. She growled, her eyes glowing further. Energy pulsed out of her. She wouldn't let Naruto's gift surmount to nothing. Her body began to bulge, growing into the size of a giant. Vines surrounded her body, making her look more like a plant-shaped humanoid than a human. Captain Atom said, "I sense some sort of energy inside her. It feels similar to nature, like chakra." Wonder Woman's sword glowed with electricity. Zeus was asking for this woman's death. Batman muttered, "I told you," though his words weren't heard by the group because Superman flew towards the giant Ivy in a fit of pure rage. Naruto. The Man-Steel roared. His punch snapped Ivy's chin back, forcing the giant to fall onto several buildings. Luckily for the Man of Steel's stupidity, Zatara had protected the buildings from damage with his magic. Superman pummeled the giant harder and harder. Ivy felt each of his blows crack the hard armor of her plants. She eventually had enough, several vines gripping the Man of Steel by his legs and throwing him to the side like a rag doll. Captain Atom said, "I'll eradicate her energy." He flew at a slow pace, deliberately trying to get Ivy to zero onto him with her vines so he could understand the molecular structure of her form. Vines wrapped around him. Ivy cackled. She said, "How slow." Clasping her hands together, the vines squeezed against his form. Captain Atom's body leaked radiation. The plants began to wilt and wither. Soon the radiation reached Ivy's main body and Atom began to use some of his molecular manipulation to eradicate all traces of chakra inside her body. Ivy screamed. She could feel her power dwindling and radiation beginning to seep into her body. Batman shouted, "Atom, stop. She'll die." Captain Atom watched as Ivy's form exploded into a million pieces of wilted flowers and vines. She fell towards the ground, body raked in pain. Superman grabbed her and shoved her against the wall. "Tell me where Naruto is." He cracked the wall with the force of his shove. Poison Ivy coughed. "I don't know." Static. "Bruce, it's Wayne Tech," Alfred said through his comm. Batman punched a wall. Superman looked towards his friend, somewhat in concern. Ivy grinned. "You fell for it." Ha ha ha. The almighty detective was too slow to realize what was going on. "Tell me what he was planning," Superman hollered. Ivy smirked. "You'll have to beat it out, me, Boy Scout." His arm was cocked, wanting to smash her through several buildings, but he was held back by Diana. "Don't," she said. "I'll be the one to get information out of her." Her lasso wrapped around Ivy's neck. She asked, "What was Naruto planning?" Ivy replied truthfully, "I don't know." Batman continued, "Naruto is intelligent. He planned for her capture. He knew she would attract our attention, used her as a diversion and provided her with no information as to clue as into his whereabouts." Ivy laughed. "There's one thing that you should know about Naruto. He would never leave an ally to bleed on the battlefield." Diana smirked. "Then why are you here?" A mist began to settle throughout Gotham. It was barely noticeable at first. It began as soon as Ivy lost. Diana felt it. His presence was undeniable and her blood lurched for his blood. She drew her sword, on guard. "He is here." The mist grew until it was thick enough that not even Diana could see through it. Atom, Superman and Batman used infrared vision to see through the mist but merely gasped. "That's impossible. I can't see," Superman said. Atom commended the mist. "Interesting, his chakra is everywhere. I'll have to use that." Wonder Woman removed her lasso from Ivy and began to spin it around, ready to capture any moving life form. She threw it and something was drawn towards them. Hey, it's me, Zatara said. Diana replied, I am sorry. Batman said, no, he's not Zatara. Zatara laughed, of course I am, I just fought with you. They all looked on edge. Why are you all on edge? It's not like Naruto can shapeshift. Batman grimaced, and that made them even more on edge. Zatara sighed, if we take Ivy, Naruto will have to follow. So let's take her to headquarters. Wonder Woman smiled, I agree. Naruto can't fight all of us. Zatara grabbed Ivy, I'll see you all there. A beam of radiation almost hit Zatara's chest. You're not Zatara, Captain Atom said. Zatara grinned demonically, wanna see a magic trick? He laughed. A burst of gravity rippled and struck all of the Justice League members, sending them flying in opposite directions. And that's how you make a grand entrance. Zatara tipped his hat. He stared at Batman who had grappled onto a wall. I thank you for playing Batman. With that Zatara vanished in a blue energy form. Dark room. So, did we manage to get what we wanted? Savage asked. Ra's al Ghul grimaced. Thanks to Naruto we managed to procure the Star Lab data as well as some useful Wayne tech. Naruto replied, even after all that help, you still couldn't breach the Wayne tech database. Savage supplied, it doesn't matter. The young heroes have interfered once more in our plans, so it's fortunate that we have an operative on the inside. Ross smirked. Naruto answered, we have a new ally to cause, Poison Ivy. Queen Bee chuckled, after today's spectacle, none can argue that she was a worthy ally. So it begins. Luthor finished. Outside Gotham. Several armored figures landed gracefully on the roof of a skyscraper. One of them said, this is the last place I felt his presence. Her eyes glowed an ethereal white as she stared at craters formed by Ivy. The Uzumaki was here. Another spoke with a growl. Sisters, we must remain calm. His time will come. The leader spoke. Today is the day Uzumaki Naruto dies. She said. Her spear struck the ground and magic surrounded the city. Naruto felt it. He shivered at the hideous feeling. Unbeknownst to him, the gears of war had finally begun to turn and Naruto would realize very soon that he had fired the opening salvo. Chakra and celestial magic were polar opposites, one given by forces of the divine and the other birthed from demons. Ever since he was a child, he had been taught to hate the Amazonians. Their history had been riddled with that of blood and iron. Despite this, Naruto had understood of the arrangement that his ancestors had agreed upon. The treaty had been overseen on the plains of a neutral ground said to have been the divide between hell and heaven where neither divine nor demonic forces had authority. Queen Hippolyta and the boy king, Uzumaki Kazuya stood before each other as they both shook hands agreeing that those who broke the writ would be killed and forever disowned. For centuries thereafter, the Uzumaki and the Maiskarans lived apart in relative peace. The Uzumaki began to grow apart from the world. Like the Amazons, they hid themselves on an island hidden amongst the whirlpools. It was however foreseen that in the end both dynasties would fall at the hands of each other. Such a prophecy was nonsense to the young warrior, Artemis. She swore vengeance as that flying alien swooped in with Princess Diana in his arms. She had never seen anything like it, the proud princess of Amazon reduced to a seething and bubbling mess, her body twitching and curling in agony from the Uzumaki's cursed mark. Even when the queen forbid against action, she still swore for vengeance. Her sisters had agreed, he was the last of his line. The last Uzumaki, should he perish, would finally put a rest to the torment they suffered at their hands. Alas, it appeared that Uzumaki Naruto was in favor of the gods. Celestial magic poured throughout the city of Gotham, invisible to all eyes except those who possessed an affinity for the arcane. Its golden light flowed through the streets like a river of gold. Artemis' eyes closed, her magic guiding her to the location of his demonic chakra. She found it, and they descended. Naruto had never seen it coming, or at least that was the impression she received when the boy had woken up to the smashing of his window. 7 Amazons standing at the foot of his bed, swords and shields drawn, they killed him before he could make a move. Only for him to smile and say, "Your gods will not guide you here." Then he exploded. The building went up in smoke and Artemis lay on the ground, Despite the ringing in her ears and the blood that poured from her wounds, she managed to find her sisters. They had been buried in piles of rubble. She screamed to the heavens in pure anguish. Why had they forsaken her? Diana awoke to alarm bells and a desire for blood. It was said that when an fellow Amazon had been slayed in battle, the remaining sisters would feel it even if they were a million miles away. This time it had felt as if she had lost more than one. Her feeling had become true as she was called back to Gotham by Batman. She frowned. I don't see anything. Batman merely picked up a sword. Her eyes wandered on the blade of Amazonium and she realized what had happened. What is going on? I can't have more of you running around my city. The Bat stressed. He truly was a fool, but none more so than her. He killed them, she muttered. Batman sighed. Naruto, I thought you said that your people wouldn't take action. We can't have another war. He had already had enough of the war of attrition taking place in this corrupt city. She steeled her gaze, gripping her lasso and sword with anger. They attacked him and he killed them. I am afraid that not even my mother can stop more of my sisters from seeking out vengeance. Batman muttered, I have something else to show you. He guided her through the rubble, into the broken home. Diana felt her heart ache. The walls had been stained red with blood and laden with the weapons of her sisters. This was the bedroom. From the angle of impact and blood pattern, it appears the focal point of the explosion came from the bed. He gazed harshly at her. I don't care much for your war, I care for Gotham. Your sisters attacked Naruto in his sleep. Only Naruto had realized in advance that they were coming. He set a trap for them. I thought you said you wanted peace, but rather your people seem to seek war. Diana growled back, he is one boy and we are 1,000. We will not fall so easily. She began to tread away, her head spinning from the detail and the gore of what she had just witnessed. And what would you do? I wish for answers, she replied. I must return to Themyscira before my mother finds out what has happened. Batman narrowed his eyes as she flew away from him. He never told her of the hidden message that Naruto had left. That would only further the conflict that was brewing. Whilst Diana would be going to Themyscira to stem the fires of war, Bruce had a much more pressing matter to deal with. He had to find Naruto before any other Amazonian did. Whether to seek punishment for the murders that Naruto committed or to help him to avoid them, he didn't know. All he knew was that the young Uzumaki would be in grave danger if he didn't find him soon. A sudden thought had manifested in his mind as he retreated from the scene. How did they find him? And was Naruto ever there? Trust no one. They'll all betray you in the end. The whispers were growing louder and louder by the day. Naruto could do nothing to silence them. His telepathy didn't work. His meditation didn't help. And worse of all, his dreams were only haunted by memories of ancient men and women from his clan. It was a maddening thing. Yet he enjoyed it anyway. They provided him with comfort and often some sound advice. It had been only because of them that he had even felt their presence. Amazonians. Curse the lot of them. If they were willing to murder him in his sleep, he promised he'd give the same courtesy. But first, he needed to retreat, away from everyone. Here, it's here. He heard a whisper. I must be going crazy. Naruto thought. There was nothing there apart from a small clearing enclosed by a forest. Can't you feel it? The magic. The voices hissed once more. Naruto closed his eyes, letting his chakra seep out of him and into his surroundings. His mother had taught him the most basic of sensing techniques, something he found that he had absolutely no talent for. Still, it did come useful for time to time. He felt nothing still, so he pumped more chakra out, saturating the world around him in his energy. He was sure that this was a particularly bad idea. He surmised that the Myskirans had only managed to track because of his usage of chakra, just like how he could feel their presence nearing his. They were like opposite ends of a magnet, except instead of feeling attracted, all you felt was pure dread. That feeling quickly returned as his chakra finally detected something. In front of him was a structure that was invisible to the naked eye, yet he couldn't deny its presence. By using his chakra in small waves, Naruto could sense tiny disturbances in the world around him. Unlike some of the most gifted sensors, he was unable to visualize or discern what those disturbances were. Though Naruto felt like he didn't even need to use his chakra, the air around him was filled with magic so divine that it made him sick. The staff. Naruto obliged. He summoned it from the seals in his arm, and a blanket of smoke enveloped him. Naruto twirled the stave in his arm. It truly felt magnificent for something that appeared as nothing more than an aged piece of wood. The Staff of Essus it was called. The historians had believed it to be merely a monument of druids in Gaul, but those who could sense magic were able to understand the vast power it held within its hollow and inscribed frame. He closed his eyes once more and summoned his chakra through the staff. The runes inscribed onto the wood glowed an ethereal blue as he slammed it upon the ground. The world around him shimmered. He felt something rip open, and in almost an instant, he was swallowed up by the ever-increasing black void of space. As he was whisked away, and slowly began to fade away from consciousness, Naruto decided that if there was one thing he resented more than the Myscarans, it was magic. Tower of Fate. The tower existed in its own space. In between worlds, it was said to house instruments of magic and power that could rip the world apart should they be used by the forces of evil once again. It had stood firm for over 1 million years. It was said that those who could perceive it were able to see its true size, never ending and constantly shifting as if to warn those who entered that they would never escape. Are we there yet? Clarion the witch boy whined at his posse. He didn't like being in the presence of such magic. Always so impatient, Kent Nelson said demurely. That must be why you decided to come here without any backup. Shut him up, Abra, Clarion demanded childishly. I don't want to hear the old fart speak again. Mute, Abracadabra said, waving his wand in such a fashion as if to trick those present with his magic. A black collar wrapped around Kent's neck. It glowed a menacing red as it locked onto his voice box. Kent tried to speak but found himself unable to do so. His eyes however twinkled as he felt the presence of the young heroes. Perhaps he might still be able to stop Clarion's ploy. The witch boy stared into distance, stroking his cat with a sadistic smile. He hopped forwards and gave Kent a feral gaze. I'd say that odds just went in my favor. Kent looked at the Lord of Chaos questioningly, until he felt its presence. The old host of Dr. Fate couldn't help but shiver at the sheer expanse and power of the demonic energy that was filtering through this domain. He hoped that young heroes could fight against the darkness that was coming, or else order would have finally been overcome by forces of chaos. With his hands bound and his mouth rendered mute, he could only direct a tiny amount of magic into a spell. Clarion's eyes bored into his. What did you do? He growled. Abra, sensing his master's anger, switched on the collar's shock setting, and Kent felt 100 volts run through his entire body. Do it again and it'll increase the voltage by 10. Don't think your old heart could handle it. Abra taunted. Kent grimaced in pain. He found himself being pushed and dragged towards the top of the tower. He might be old, but he had at least succeeded in summoning them. In one of the neighboring planes, Kid Flash shivered in the cold rot on from the icy world around them. Frustration was quickly mounting as he and the team were unable to find any escape from this hellish weather. Well, all except Aqualad, who seemed to particularly enjoy the cold. This is all your fault. Artemis stressed with some anger. You nearly got us cooked because you didn't believe. Megan stared at him with some lost expression. You don't believe. Of course, I don't. Kid Flash acquiesced. Magic is a lie. Really now? Aqualad argued. Then explain how we managed to find ourselves in this place. He gestured to the never-ending expanse of the icy plain. I don't know. Kid Flash waved his hands annoyedly. Maybe, just maybe, this is a pocket dimension. He rolled his eyes at their disbelief. Oh come on, I can't believe you think magic is real. I come from Atlantis. Aqualad deadpanned, as if it explained everything. Yeah, and I am faster than sound, doesn't explain anything. Kid Flash found his gaze settling into the horizon in front of him. If we don't escape here soon, we'll all freeze to death. Talk for yourself, Superboy countered. The Kryptonian would undoubtedly be one of the few in the group that could actually survive this absurd cold. What's that? Megan spoke softly. Kid Flash turned around to the floating walking stick. He smirked and said sarcastically, let me guess, you'll be saying that's the old Mont's wand. Artemis snorted as she moved towards it. Maybe it is. Kid Flash rolled his eyes and sped towards the stick in time before Artemis could touch it. They both grasped the cool metal and looked at each other. Kid Flash grinned. See, it's just a walkie. He couldn't finish his sentence as he and Artemis vibrated away in a flash of light. Aqualad, Megan and Superboy looked towards each other in surprise. Superboy asked, Did we just get left behind? Megan stared at spot that her friends had just been. How do we get out? She wondered. Her physiology couldn't handle this level of cold any longer, though unlike fire, it wouldn't actually kill her. That might be a start. Aqualad gestured to a powerful light streaking through the sky. It came barreling towards the ground with incredible speed. Get down, Superboy shouted. The streak impacted the ground with the force of a meteor, creating a wave of heavy pressure and snow to spread everywhere. Megan grabbed Aqualad and flew them away from the incoming snow avalanche. Her eyes could barely perceive it. In the fissure she saw a boy, someone far more familiar to her. She gasped. Naruto. Aqualad questioned. What? His voice filled with a greater uncertainty. They had heard what happened between the Justice League and Naruto. They couldn't beat someone like him in a fight, not when they had no possible route of escape or any tactical advantage over him. Come on. She flew them towards the fissure. She felt slightly excited to meet him again. Naruto and she had never been close friends, but she had a lot of respect for her fellow redhead. The truth, however, was she, like every member of the young team, wanted answers for why he had done what he had done. Betrayal, some of them said, but Megan had always known that there were always two sides to a story. They landed in front of the crater and found Naruto in the middle of it, laying incredibly still. She asked, "Is he okay?" Aqualad grimaced. It would take a lot to kill Naruto. He remained unmoving for an entire minute. Superboy eventually landed beside them. His gaze settled on the still body of Naruto. Is that? Yes, Aqualad replied. A groan slowly brought their attention back towards Naruto. He slowly got up, murmuring, "God, I hate magic." Though he appeared to be none too aware of their presence. Naruto, Megan said softly. As if one cue, Naruto jumped back in response to realizing that he wasn't alone. His staff pointed towards them. Megan, he croaked out. She hummed in response. What are you doing here? She asked. I could ask you the same thing. He replied, but if you must know, I have a meeting with fate. She rolled her eyes at the cryptic answer. Some things it seemed would never change. She forced some anxiousness down before she allowed herself to say it. It's good to see again. He grinned. Miss me, Marshall. His eyes seemed to lack that distinct playfulness that they used to have, but she still understood the jest. You bastard. Naruto shifted his body in turn to avoid the slamming punch from Superboy. Calm down. Naruto gestured, his arms high up in the air to signify his surrender. I am not here to fight. I've actually only come to stop a war. That made Superboy stop in his tracks. He looked at the Uzumaki with a quizzical expression. After what happened during my fight with Wonder Woman, he said her name with a spiteful, venomous tone. He quelled his bloodlust before continuing, they want me dead. Aqualad looked skeptical. Surely, Wonder Woman wouldn't allow for such a thing. Naruto spat. Diana is of the Myskaron. They are my mortal enemies and I am theirs. They wish for the last remaining Uzumaki's head to be at their feet, for my line to end. Only then will this be satisfied. Aqualad said, and what does this tower have to do with anything? I intend to end the war. Naruto stressed. It sounded like a peaceful gesture to both Megan and Superboy, but Aqualad had sensed the dull undertones in Naruto's voice. He had heard of the Uzumaki in his training at Atlantis. It was one of the reasons he tried so hard to become friends with Naruto, if anything to prove his people that they were wrong, that the Uzumaki weren't just a people of war and demonic tendencies. Aqualad asked, and how will we get there? Magic, of course. He slammed the staff onto the ground once more. A door opened up, presenting them a staircase that seemingly led to a tower. Naruto muttered, I guess they were right. 1,000 steps to victory. Yes, boy, get the amulet. It's the only way. They murmured to him. Naruto scrunched his eyes closed, trying to neuter their voices before any of the others picked up on his glazed expression. Well then, let's get going. Naruto said. The three of them looked at him with a questioning gaze. Megan asked excitedly, you can do magic. Well, everyone can do magic. He corrected, I can't really do spells or whatnot, but my chakra is enough to make this hunk of wood work. Aqualad replied, I am not so sure. I thought you had to have an affinity for the mystic arts to use magic. Naruto chuckled, that what they teach you in Atlantis. Heck, Wonder Woman can't use magic, but that doesn't mean she can't use magical items to perform magic. Superboy stayed silent as they walked the steps leading to the tower. He wondered, what side are you truly on? It had meant to be a thought, but he had accidentally let it slip. What side I've always been on? Naruto replied. And which side is that? Aqualad asked. My own. He grinned before frowning. Atop the tower, he could see the faintest flashes of red and gold. It had already begun. Dr. Fate would be summoned soon and he had to stop it before it happened. He looked back. I am sorry, I have to go. Wait, Megan tried to say, but Naruto had already launched himself into the air. We never got to ask him why he left. Aqualad consoled her. We'll find out after we save Kent. Though his tone remained unsure. He gazed at Naruto's flying form watching him reach the top of the tower. He feared that the next time that they met, there wouldn't be much time to be civil. Clarion growled as he dodged yet another blast from Kent Nelson. You can't think that your pathetic attempts at magic can hope to defeat me. He raised his hands, gesturing in a finger gun motion. He grinned. Let me show how it's done. As if his hands were guns, he fired a barrage of chaos magic onto the golden shield surrounding Kent and the mask. The barrage of magic cracked Kent's weak shield and shattered it like glass. Kid Flash watched in shock as Clarion's arms swung as if he were throwing a pitch. Clarion's sickening smirk seemed to grow. The speedster couldn't react in time to the invisible ball of energy that struck Kent in the chest. Red electricity arced upwards from Kent's body, electrocuting Kid Flash and everything in a 5-meter radius. Kent had enough energy to grab his staff and slam it onto the ground, generating another shield that blocked out several more energy blasts sent from Clarion. Boy, the mask, he tried to gasp but was unable to stop the electricity from stopping his heart. He fell to the ground unconscious and dying. Clarion screamed, no, no. He watched Kid Flash grab the helmet of fate and began to send out dozens of energy blasts towards him. Give it to me, I want it, he roared, but the shield stood strong. It appeared Kent's sacrifice had strengthened the barrier with far more powerful magic than Clarion was used to. Kid Flash felt the power in his hands. He grinned childishly. Is this what you want? He placed the helmet above his head. Hey kid, if you put that on, you're never going to get it off. Clarion tried to placate the teenager from running his plans. You hurt the doc, Kid Flash said angrily as he placed the helmet on his face. Clarion growled angrily. You'll pay for this. But as per usual, instead of fighting a child with the power of fate, Nabu floated above him, basking everything in his gold light. The Lord of Fate had always tended to be extravagant in his use of powers. Nabu sneered at the witch boy. You have come to my domain, Clarion. His hands glowed in an ethereal yellow. I don't enjoy trespassers. Golden energy rushed forth and smashed straight into Clarion's red shield. Clarion responded in kind. His power increased, and he whispered an incantation. Nabu couldn't dodge in time. His host's affinity for much was so small that he was required to use the barest of spells. A pentagram spread behind him, and out of it came several bullets of red electricity. He roared in pain. Clarion generated a whip that he sent sailing through the air. Its studded end pierced into Fate's leg and he forced it to come down. The Lord of Fate smashed into the ground with outstanding power. Your domain. You've grown rusty. Nabu and I've only gotten stronger in your absence. The witch boy waved his arms in a maniacal fashion. Can't you feel the forces of chaos? They've become more powerful. Order is always the same, predictable and so, very boring. His grip on his whip increased as he sent Nabu sailing through the air. Nabu's eyes flashed gold. He would not be demeaned in such a fashion. Clarion's eyes widened. You wouldn't. Leave my domain. The Lord of Fate stressed. Clarion's lips tightened. You can't beat me, Nabu. But Nabu didn't have to. He charged his magic once more and released into a blast that scorched the earth that Clarion was standing on. The witch boy erected a shield that protected him easily from the blast, but his familiar, the cat, wasn't so lucky. Clarion felt his power decrease. His presence began to wane. He felt the damage that his tickle had taken. He glared at Nabu. I can't believe you'd hurt a defenseless pussycat. Nabu merely raised his once more, intent on banishing the Lord of Fate's presence from his domain. With the death of your cat, I can rest easy that your return to this plane won't be for a very long time. Clarion teleported towards his cat and grabbed it. He erected another shield to protect himself from another blast. Nabu was however far more intent on defeating Clarion. Gold chains spurred from the ground and began to wrap themselves around Clarion, coiling around his feet and arms. Tikal fell to the ground. The cat whimpered feebly at the incoming beam of light that headed their way. Doden Doryuheki. Something moved in front of Clarion and his cat. Nabu narrowed his eyes as the figure slammed his hands onto the ground and a 20-foot wall of earth and mud blocked his energy blast. I thought the Lord of Fate was meant to be all good, the figure joked, his fangs bared angrily, and purple eyes glowed sinisterly at Nabu's casting. You are not meant to be here, demon. Naruto laughed. Wait, little ol me, a demon. I think you're mistaking me for someone else. Gravity shifted and Nabu found himself being thrust downwards by Naruto's immense gravitational pull. Clarion growled, "Get me out of these chains." Naruto gave him a sideway glance. He said, "If I am a demon then what are you?" He gestured towards the bound boy. "I never knew Lord of Orders liked to kill children." Nabu glowered, "That is no child, boy. Move or I will deal with you as well." Naruto's eyes widened in pure shock as Nabu merely waved off his gravity. Impossible. Clarion watched as Naruto jumped away to avoid a torrent of golden chains before releasing a powerful surge of chakra to ripple away from his eyes. A golden ankh appeared in front of Nabu, blocking the energy beam and absorbing it. Naruto couldn't react in time as his own chakra struck him square in the back. Naruto groaned in pain from the blow. I can't win this fight, Naruto admitted to himself. Clarion's frown turned into a smirk as he felt Nabu's concentration on the chains begin to wane. He used that momentary lapse in judgment to shatter them and grab Tikal. Nabu turned toward him and conjured more chains, but Clarion was ready for them this time. Not this time, Nabu, Clarion said with a childish laugh as he teleported away. Naruto gulped as he felt Nabu's presence begin to focus onto him. You have made a grave error, Nabu said. His arms began to raise themselves once more and Naruto was struck by an invisible force that sent him spiraling into the air. The amulet. Naruto began to look for it but found he had little time to complete a surveyed observation of his surrounding as Nabu began to summon thousands of different chains from the air around him. Naruto dodged, dancing in the air and avoiding each of the chains from wrapping around him. Fool, it's a trap, he heard a whisper, but Naruto couldn't react to it. Nabu slammed his hands together and the chains coiled themselves into a ball-like shape that formed around him. Naruto felt the ball tighten around him. The divine chains began to burn his skin. Arg! He had barely enough wits about him to summon the staff once more and pump his chakra into it. Nabu narrowed his eyes. He had thought that his victory was assured, but the boy had summoned a powerful magic instrument to counteract his divine magic. A blue and gold explosion erupted in the air, blanketing the air in a wave of light that he could barely see through. Out of the light, emerged hundreds of Narutos rushing towards him with swords and weapons alike. The being of order should have banished them all away, but something happened that blocked his magic from working. His gaze settled on the Naruto in the middle of the pack, barely making out the etching on the wooden stave. He knew then that Naruto possessed one of the few items of destruction and chaos, the Staff of Essus. You are an instrument of chaos, Nabu questioned. Naruto frowned. I am what I have to be in order to survive. I didn't come here to fight. The being would have snorted if it could. Nabu's magic streamed forth and delved into Naruto's mind. The boy's mind was incredibly powerful for that of a non-gifted psionic, but it was not powerful enough to counteract his magic. Naruto's eyes rolled back in pain as he felt Nabu's presence pierce into his mind. You come for an exchange? Nabu asked. The amulet of Anubis for the Staff of Essus. Naruto croaked out. Nabu replied, You cannot ask for such a thing. Naruto challenged. I can give this to Clarion if that is what you want. I am sure he'll love to be reunited with one of his favorite toys. He had hoped that Nabu wouldn't realize his folly. Nabu said, I cannot give you an instrument of order. Naruto narrowed his eyes as Nabu raised his hands to begin for another battle. But you will not be leaving this plane with that staff. Naruto smirked. He split half of his shadow clones into a separate contingent and exploded the others to create a huge smoke screen. Nabu could follow the magic of the staff as Naruto launched himself into the air. Nabu followed in pursuit, leaving behind the amulet that was secured around Kent Nelson's neck. The amulet of Anubis was one of the most powerful instruments of magic. It had one feature, however, that Naruto wanted to use. Its ability to make the user undetectable to magical detection. Nabu and Naruto launched themselves into a battle of wills, both wielding instruments opposite to that of the other. Nabu's magic proved futile against Naruto's, and Naruto's blasts were nothing to Nabu. "Boss, I got it." Naruto dove down to the earth. His unexpected turn in direction surprised Nabu, who couldn't get his teleportation magic to go quick enough to reach Naruto before he reached his destination. Naruto's second surprise for Nabu was to use his clones as a momentary distraction. The Lord of Order would no doubt feel nothing, but Naruto didn't intend for that. Nabu emerged from his Ankh and he found himself surrounded by a dozen clones. He found Naruto grasping the amulet of Anubis from Kent's prone body. The Lord of Order wasn't prepared for Naruto to throw the staff towards him. Naruto shouted, "And Uzumaki always keeps his promise." With that, as Nabu conjured forth his chains once more, Naruto gripped the amulet and whispered a name that was far too familiar. Amun-Ra. The starry blue interior of the amulet glowed a powerful gold. Nabu tried to break through, but like his own magic, Anubis' charm was that of a much higher calling. Naruto's body was wrapped in a golden hue and then he exploded into a million flutters of light. Gone. Nabu couldn't even track him. It didn't make sense. The boy knew far too much about the inner working of order and chaos. How did he even know about this tower or where to find it? He would have to ponder on such matters. But first, he had a fake magician to rout and some children to save. Diana had spent days at Themyscira. When she arrived, she had found a grand council had been put in place and Artemis kneeling in front of her mother. "I beg your forgiveness, my queen." Artemis knelt. Her tone remained firm yet soft. "I did what I did to save our people. You circumvented my authority," Hippolyta said tightly. He attacked the princess, branded her with his torture mark. She spat. "I and our sisters will not stand for such a threat to go without warning." "And how did that work out for you?" Diana said angrily. "You started a war." Artemis stood up and howled. "He started it when he stood against you. When he broke the treaty." She turned to her sisters. "Who here wishes for retribution?" Uzumaki Naruto is the last remaining Uzumaki in the world. His death will only bring us peace. "I say we fight. Fight for our dead sisters, what say you?" She said icily. The Amazons remained quiet for a brief moment before they howled in response, arms in the air. Artemis rounded towards the queen and knelt once more. "We can win this, my queen. We cannot tolerate his presence anymore. I will not allow for war to break out again." One of the sisters replied, "You are afraid of one boy." Hippolyta scowled. "Have you seen him fight?" She fidgeted at the braces of her throne, thinking deeply on how to resolve this situation. "Uzumaki Naruto will not be touched. The treaty will be honored." Artemis bowed but spoke against her council. "The Grand Council must decide for us, my queen." Hippolyta said, "All against this motion." The majority of the council raised their hands. They had all wanted Uzumaki's blood for what had happened. Artemis smiled. She would get her opportunity to avenge her sisters. "To war," she roared, and they all roared in response. Diana's frustration peaked. Her fist found one of the pillars in the temple. Artemis looked at her old friend and said, "You should be happy. We are doing this for you." Diana hissed, "You've doomed us all. Do you not know what happened during the last war? Or that Naruto houses enough chakra to fight for 100 days on end?" Artemis remained silent. "He has allies. He hides in secret. We can find him." Artemis replied, "I already did." Hippolyta addressed that. "After your failed assassination, he will take extra precautions not to be found." "And how can he do that?" one of the council members asked. "By seeking out the amulet of Anubis." A soft voice spoke from the front of the temple. They all rose and knelt in the presence of the Queen of Olympus. Hera said, "Rise, my children." Hippolyta gulped. He sought an instrument of order. "Is it not under the protection of the lords? We cannot see him anymore." "Blasphemy," one of the council members shouted. "He seeks to undo us." Hera's smile turned into a frown. "He seeks what he cannot have." "And what is that?" "Family." Diana's eyes widened at that. Naruto sought to unravel reality. He sought to return his family from the dead. She had heard of such powers being manipulated before. The revival of Themyscira after their death at the hands of the Uzumaki was one such example. Hera stressed, the Uzumaki must be defeated before he accomplishes such a thing. Artemis nodded. Her quest had been set and she had now been given authority by something beyond that of their queen. Diana rushed out of the temple. Hera's gentle smile had a sickening undertone, the final Uzumaki. His death would give her great joy. She had sought after him, following every trail that Batman had given to her but to no avail. No one could find him. Zatara's magic couldn't trace his location and Adam had detection no significant permeation of chakra. It seemed all lost. All except one, Batman had detected something in Japan. So here she stood in front of a monastery deep within the forested area around Kyoto. She searched the abandoned building and found nothing.